Chapter 684. William and the 7 Devil Kings looked at each other. They kept blaming each other for releasing the monster, but they did not attract the attention of the god of darkness. When the monster appeared, it used its godly aura to suppress the entire dark continent. In a short period of time, countless dark creatures were crushed. The 7 Devil Kings believed that they were not the masters of the dark world, so they did not feel bad. But the god of darkness was the true master of this continent. He had already started fighting with the monster, and it seemed like they were on par with each other. The god of darkness had a human form. He was more than 3 meters tall and had a slender body. His entire body was as black as ink, and his eyes were the same. The origin of darkness was constantly being released from his body. He had the body of a god, a perfect, dark, elemental body. That was right. He had the same elemental body as the god of darkness. When the god of darkness had first appeared, some people had suspected that the monster was related to the god of darkness. In addition, the god of darkness had taken the initiative to imprison the monster in the dark world. The connection seemed to be even greater. But what was curious was that after the god of darkness became a god of darkness, he did not attack the monster. But the god of darkness did not want to divulge these secrets, so no one could find out anything from him. At this moment, after the seal on the dark monster was removed, his aura continued to grow. He hunched his body and used his sharp teeth and claws to attack the god of darkness. In addition, he had the perfect dark elemental body, so he was like a fish in water in this world. He was very agile. Even though he only used brute force, his every move carried endless dark elements. He was on par with the god of darkness when he was in the state of God's descent. Bang! 2 figures collided with each other. The shockwaves from the collision swept across the land. Lightning and storms appeared in the dark sky. William stood at the bottom of the battlefield. He felt like he was about to be swept away by the shockwaves. A battle between the god of darkness was enough to destroy the world. "Get in!" The god of darkness roared. He had activated the sacred battlefield, but he did not have enough power to send the monster in. Both parties continued to tug at each other. The dark monster's neck suddenly elongated. It broke free and bit at the god of darkness' arm. Crack! The god of darkness' right arm was broken, but he still had his left arm. He punched back. Half of the monster head was almost smashed, but it quickly recovered. Meanwhile, the monster's 4 limbs began to twist and wrap around the god of darkness, constantly tearing at his flesh. What was unbelievable was that, or in other words, the strength of the darkness monster's main body was too great. The body of the god of darkness, which had been descended by the darkness monster, was actually torn into pieces by it. Although the incarnation of the god of darkness had escaped the calamity, there was no suitable candidate to possess for a short period of time. But in the next second, the darkness monster suddenly locked onto a dark sovereign, and the latter retreated in terror. His speed was as fast as lightning, and he even tore through the space and fled tens of thousands of meters away. However, the dark monster stretched out its hand, and the dark elements that filled the sky turned into its assistance. It directly grabbed the Lord of Darkness, who had fled far away, and bit down on his neck. In an instant, it sucked all his blood, turning him into a mummy. Fortunately, after the King of Darkness was drained of all his energy, he was thrown out. His soul was still relatively intact. He was like a mummy, waiting for the big withered eyeball to run out. Yes, he was running out, because the laws of darkness within a radius of 1,000,000 miles had been drained by the 2 Lord gods. If the King of Darkness did not have any energy, he would not be able to use the laws of darkness. He would be like a weak child. Howl! There was an angry roar. The darkness monster was howling, and the sound waves engulfed the heavens and earth. The deafening sound made countless dark creatures kneel on the ground. Whether he was the Lord God of Darkness or a dark, ferocious spirit, he was essentially an existence that could crush all dark creatures. The expressions of William and the 7 Devil Kings changed, and they continued to secretly retreat. However, the god of darkness returned once again. He gave him a glance and told them to stay here obediently. He found another Lord of Darkness as a vessel, and once again, he came in front of the darkness monster. Both of them looked at each other. The darkness monster used its bright red tongue to lick its fangs and slowly approached the god of darkness. The god of darkness clenched his fists, and he could not help but say in a deep voice, "After so many years, you still haven't woken up?" The darkness monster did not respond to the god of darkness question. It immediately charged forward, using its battle instincts to fight the enemy in front of it. The god of darkness retreated step by step, blocking the Lord of Darkness. He would rather the Lord of Darkness be torn into pieces and die. He did not want to harm his monster. On the other hand, William was slightly surprised. What did this mean? Could it be that they were really brothers? Ahem, that was right. When gods were born, they did not have enough souls, and they had too much energy, so they could form twins. One was a natural god, and the other was a ferocious spirit. But most gods would kill their twin with their own hands. Otherwise, they would let the twin escape. They did not want to bother themselves with it. When this monster appeared, the god of darkness was very surprised. He did not expect the monster to appear, and he did not want to kill it. Oh, this made William think of a possibility. This ferocious spirit might have had some intelligence in the beginning, but due to his birth problems, he had lost his intelligence. Perhaps because he had better endowments, he had advanced to the Lord God's realm and killed his way out. As to why the gods had listened to the god of darkness and sealed him in the dark world, besides the fact that they could not kill him and did not want to leave him in the gods' continent, it was because they were worried about the god of darkness. It had to be known. In the mythological era, there were many factions of gods. However, most of them were from the light and darkness factions. Each of them had dozens of gods under their command. Who would be able to stop them without becoming a core god? At this moment, the dark, ferocious spirit was still attacking. He tore the ground with his hands and trampled on the river of lava. Within a short span of 10 minutes, the Lord of Darkness had changed his host 3 times. Some of the Lord of Darkness had to flee. Finally, the god of darkness did not show mercy. He condensed runes in his hands and slammed his palms downwards. Buzz! A black pillar of light descended from the sky. In an instant, it enveloped the dark, ferocious spirit. That black pillar of light was the god of darkness' main body. Not only was the dark, ferocious spirit trapped, but his body was also turning into ashes. The dark, ferocious spirit's recovery speed was very fast, but his body was dissolving even faster. In a short span of 3 minutes, the dark, ferocious spirit's body was left with a set of pitch-black bones and a fist-sized black godhood. Godhood. It did not require faith to form. The early gods only needed to absorb enough magic to form godhood. Faith was just a way to replace energy. The dark, ferocious spirit in front of them had not absorbed any faith. This caused his dark magic to be extremely pure. It cannot be suppressed in a short period of time. Fortunately, the black pillar of light continued to cause damage to the dark, ferocious spirit. At this moment, the god of darkness did not care about his brother. He finally turned his gaze to William, the 7 devil kings, and the others. William coughed lightly. He decisively revealed his father's blood essence between his eyebrows. He was just sure of writing "My father is a super sage" on his forehead. The corners of the 7 demon kings' lips twitched. They had never thought that this over-god level vicious spirit would have such poor stamina. It had been dealt with so easily. They did not expect the god of darkness to appear so quickly. He did not give them time to escape. Let's put it this way. They suddenly felt that they had been tricked by William. Yes, they had been tricked by William. As William had the memories of Odin, he had some understanding of this monster. He knew that he was not a match for the main god. Why did he trick the 7 devil kings? That was not true. William wanted to cause a rift between the god of darkness and the 7 devil kings. After the true god of darkness descended, one of the 7 devil kings would become the main god. That way, they would not be able to cooperate closely with the god of darkness. This would change the future situation. "Lucifer, did you let him go?" the god of darkness asked in a cold and emotionless voice. Lucifer was very arrogant in the previous chapter, but now he wanted to kneel on the ground. He hurriedly said, "My God, you have wronged us. The dark world is our home. It depends on everyone to protect the dark world. How could we do such a thing? Yes, it's the Lord of the City of Dawn's fault. It's him. If he did not barge into the abyss barrier, how could this have happened? At this moment, the 7 devil kings pointed at William at the same time. The god of darkness squinted his eyes and looked at the guy in front of him. Many scenes flashed through his mind. He looked thoughtfully at the Lord's armor. That was Odin's aura. Who is Odin? Among the many main gods of the Nightmare faction, Odin's combat power was not the strongest, but he was not weak either. But he was very important. He was the main member of the research team to eliminate the belief. He was equivalent to the chief academician of the Academy of Sciences. The god of darkness knew about William. He knew that William's father was Roger's god luck, and his mother was the former god of life. The former goddess of magic seemed to have become his girlfriend. F***CK. The god of darkness was shocked. What kind of family background was this? But no matter how powerful William's family background was this a reason for him to provoke him? Tell me. If you can't give me a reason, I'll let your father see you for the last time. The god of darkness waved his hand, and all the darkness elements in the world of darkness gathered there, forming a huge barrier. But William's heart slowly returned from his throat to his stomach. This situation was very obvious. The god of darkness was putting on an act. Since he did not intend to kill his father, he did not want to fight with his father in this state. Hence, William coughed lightly and said, "You might not believe it. Odin owes my father a favor, so he asked me to come to this temple to retrieve something." The god of darkness raised his eyebrows. Odin was a member of the Nightmare faction, so he should not have any relationship with Rogers. He did not believe it, especially since Odin had appeared in the Middle-earth continent in advance. He had not been to the impassable continent, so it did not make sense for him to have dealings with Roger's godluck. But at this moment, suddenly, a sentence appeared in his mind. The god of darkness glanced thoughtfully at Mastia, who was also called Little Timo by William. Hence, he waved his hand to separate everyone. Only William and him were left here, in this small hidden space. The god of darkness revealed a smile, as if he had seen an old friend. But he could not help but gnash his teeth and say, "I sent someone to the Middle-earth continent to look for you. Why did you avoid me? You're the King creator of the elimination of faith. Why did you fall to the legendary realm? Let me tell you, if you don't explain yourself today, don't leave." William stretched out his hand and knocked on the dark barrier beside him. It was a little hard, but it could be penetrated. Hence, he said in a relaxed manner, "You've split your soul into 2, but you're still able to control the main god's body. Half of my soul has reincarnated, while the other half remains in my real body. To achieve this, I have no choice but to do so. You're a god and a sage at the same time. Speaking of which, your reincarnation ability is not bad. Your family background is unimaginably large. How does it feel to acknowledge Rogers as your father? But then again, didn't Rogers, god luck, dig out your underwear? Didn't he discover that you're Odin?" The god of darkness looked at him thoughtfully. But before William could reply, the god of darkness continued, "Forget it. I don't have time to waste on a traitor like you who has walked the path of God and sage. Tell me, what do you want to tell me after creating such a huge commotion?" William narrowed his eyes and suddenly said, "You should have eliminated your faith a long time ago. Don't worry about the thoughts in your heart and descend in advance." Then the prince pointed his finger upwards and said a few words without saying a word. The god of darkness' expression changed drastically. He even wanted to cover William's mouth. He looked at William with a puzzled expression. How did William know about it? But William knew, and he seemed to know even more clearly. This concerned the fate of everyone. But the god of darkness listened to William quietly. What was William talking about? The god of devouring? He was a fool who had been cheated for 3 eras. The god of time? He could bring William back to the past and create the current situation. He was definitely a super mysterious figure, but he was not an enemy. He was a teammate. Gods, sages, humans, elves, and Seraphin. Which of them was an enemy? None of them. The real enemies were the chosen ones from the other world who had limitless potential. Or rather, It was the mastermind that controlled the descent of the chosen ones. If there were no accidents, the mastermind was the one who instilled the idea of the descent of the chosen ones into everyone's mind. And the spokesperson of the mastermind should be a living, true God. Heaven? No such existence. The gods had lived for so many years, but they had never seen the heavens. Were the gods fools? Were the many-peaked sages fools? They had long felt that something was amiss, but they did not dare to explore the unknown existence. He was too powerful. They could vaguely feel that their fates were being controlled by him. There was a constant civil war, struggle, and chaos. However, some deities were not willing to accept this. They were not willing to become puppets. They were frantically searching for a way to become true gods and secretly counterattacking. The god of time reversed time and made William return to the past, thus changing the main plot. Roger's providence became the god of fate. He tried his best to free everyone's fates so that they would not be controlled. Thus, he disrupted the control of that existence. The Supreme Pontiff of Light became a super sage in advance and crazily did things that he could not do in his previous life. Then, who was William's enemy? He thought for a long time. He did not understand. Why was the path to become a true god so tortuous? In the end, he understood. His or their enemy. Not a sage, not a god. And the spokesperson of the mastermind was a true god. That true god was even using unimaginable means to control the sages who had eternal life and could travel through the void. He had no intention of going to the universe. As for what they had to do now, that was to put on a realistic show that required them to sacrifice their lives. And the lucky one in this show would become a true god and escape the fate of being a plaything in the world. As for why the gods had to descend in advance, obviously, there was nothing better than disrupting the plan of the mastermind. I call this plan the NPC's counterattack. William muttered in his heart. Chapter 685. A month after William wreaked havoc in the dark world, the gods descended. Yes, after most of the ordinary gods had descended to the mortal world, the remaining 23 main gods descended to the mortal world at the same time a few decades earlier. At that moment, 23 magnificent pillars of light descended from the sky. The projection of the main gods could be seen in every corner of the gods' continent. The heavens and the earth resonated. The entire continent trembled. Countless creatures could not help but kneel on the ground, as if they were welcoming the many main gods. The sages of the human race, elves, winged race, and dwarves trembled, because they were suppressed even more severely, even though the power of the main gods did not make them kneel on the ground. However, that unparalleled power still pierced through their mental defenses, causing them to involuntarily feel as if they were unable to resist or resist it. But at the same time, some people with extraordinary talent and indestructible confidence broke through their levels under such great pressure. They even advanced step by step until they reached the Supreme Sage realm. For example, the rune mages of the human race, Sun Death, Qualls, the winged race's Angel Michael, Holy Angel Gabriel, some of the elven kings who had not fallen since the Second Era. At that moment, they reached the Supreme Sage realm almost at the same time, and they used the same great power to resist the great pressure of the main gods, so that all the creatures on the gods' continent had a chance to breathe. But why did this happen? Because the main plot had changed too much. This had far exceeded a certain setting of heaven. The representative of the mainframe had intended to let the 23 main gods stall for a period of time, giving the sages enough time to develop, so that more supreme sages would be born in the three races, and more plots would be born. Only then would the main gods descend. Only in this way could they form an evenly matched epic war that was exciting enough. And William, the main god of time, the Pope of Light, the god of darkness, Roger's providence, and many other beings were using their own methods to change the entire world, to break the plot that should have happened. Then, according to some infinite novels, if the outsiders changed the plot greatly and increased the combat power of a certain faction, what would happen to the enemy? Become stronger. It became an even match. Supreme Sage. It was far from being as difficult to break through as imagined. But why were those peak saints stuck for so long? This was because the spokesperson of the mainframe was a true god. He controlled the valve that allowed one to become a transcendent saint. If he did not open it, others would never be able to enter it, unless they encountered an unstoppable accident. How did the Holy Father of Light break through? He encountered a sudden change in the plot. In an extremely unexpected situation, William activated the incarnation of the thunder god Thor. That was the power of a sovereign. The Supreme Pontiff of Light had been at the pinnacle of the Holy Throne for a long time and could even be considered the strongest person on the continent. But could he really defeat the incarnation of the Thunder God? No, it was impossible. However, the Holy Father of Light would play an extremely important role in the future plot. Would he die so easily? It was equally impossible. In that case, the only way was to change the pace of the plot and allow the Holy Father of Light to step into the transcendent saint realm in advance, thus changing the situation of the battle. But it was also from that moment onwards. The changes in the plot of the entire God's continent caused a chain reaction. William, the transmigrator, had disrupted the originally planned route and destroyed it step by step. He, this little butterfly, had stirred up a storm that could overturn a world. On the official forum, countless players became excited because today was the day. 23 sovereigns descended at the same time. 12 sages had also reached the Supreme Sage realm. The confrontation projection that was released across the entire continent was enough to make countless players unable to close their legs. Drunken immortal god. To be honest, when the aura of 23 sovereigns erupted, I felt like I wanted to die. My D*CK instantly became wet. Nation's old man Yin, don't talk, I'm wet too. I'm going to clean up the gaming chamber. I'm going offline first. Ladies who want to know more about the situation, add me to WX. Forever alone. I'm very curious. The realism of this game is too much. I'm also cough. Cocoa Bean fan. What? Why are all of you wet while I'm the only one who is scared to the point of peeing? Undead tree. You idiot, I made it sound more elegant. You idiot. In the next moment, a war of words started. 3 minutes later, both parties were muted. William scanned the contents of the forum and did not continue to pay attention to it. The players did not notice the changes in the plot. They only treated it as a background plot. The players were even more excited about the future plot. They did not know that the God's world had undergone earth-shattering changes. In fact, deep in William's heart, he did not hate this group of players. He only disliked the mastermind. He just wanted to escape from the mastermind's control. Or rather, every NPC wanted to escape from the mastermind's control. Fortunately, the final battle has not started. Everyone has restrained themselves. Before finding the opportunity to become a true god, they will definitely not start the final battle. To a large extent, William was betting. He was betting that the plot of the God's world had been designed. He was betting that the mastermind could control the factors that led to the Supreme Sage realm. He was betting that, after the arrival of the 23 sovereigns, many sages would be able to advance to the Supreme Sage realm. It was obvious. He had made the right bet. Next, will something even more serious happen? William narrowed his eyes. He was the one who had changed the plot and was the source of all the chaos in the plot. Under the control of the mastermind would not have any murderous intent towards William. But William had crossed the mastermind's bottom line again and again. He had changed the huge scale of the plot again and again. He believed he was being targeted. For example, the World Tree was in the City of Dawn. 10 days after the arrival of the sovereigns, a piece of news suddenly appeared. The 12 sages of the humans, namely Crores, had suddenly provided evidence that the City of Dawn had a world tree that had grown to a height of more than 9,000 meters. At the same time, it had given birth to elves, and there was an incredible amount of life potion and magic source. At this moment, countless professionals flocked to the teleportation hall. Hundreds of people appeared every second in the teleportation hall. Some of them only wanted to take a look at the world tree. Some of them held up their space rings, hoping to buy some life potion to heal their injuries and extend their lifespan. Some enchanters and great enchanters took out piles of magic materials in an attempt to exchange for some magic source. And these people, their motives were relatively simple. They were doing it for themselves. But the sovereigns, supreme sages, and the sages of various forces and races were also looking at the world tree. Without a doubt, in the eyes of some people, they had mastered the world tree. It was no less than mastering the shortcut to becoming a true god. All of a sudden, the storm was brewing. Regardless of whether it was the professionals or the players of the City of Dawn, they felt as if there was a dark cloud above their heads. At this moment, on the observation deck of the Magic Tower, William hugged Moses' waist. He calmly looked at everything in the city and said in a deep voice, "The fate that has been planned by God has been changed, and an accident has occurred. That is, one of us will step onto the path of a real God. And that person, he is the Savior." Moses looked at the man in front of him and could not help but ask softly, "Is it worth it? If we follow his plan, we might not die. Is there need to gamble so much?" Upon hearing this, His Royal Highness smiled and said, "I once heard the Chosen One tell a joke." What? Moses did not understand. William looked at the sky and said in a deep voice, "Do you want to be a coward for life or a hero? Even if it's only for a second." I want to say that I want to be a hero, even if it's only for a second, even if it's only for a few days. Because I don't want to be a puppet for eternity. As for the outcome of this war, winner takes all. I'm willing to bet, and I'm willing to lose. After this, I'll be the hero of this world. William suddenly laughed. William suddenly chuckled. Even if I lose, as long as someone steps into the true God realm, I will still be a hero, an upright hero. Do you know, I've been a yes man for my entire life. But now I have enough courage. And that courage is all of you. At this moment, many images flashed across William's mind. Lautner, Eric, Burned Cinder, Diablo, Solomon, Chien, Akero. There were too many people. There were too many factions and forces. There were too many friends. Some of them were epic, but some of them had become transcendents. William calmly glanced at his luck points. 1. There was no way to surrender. But he glanced at his charm points. 1,500 points. TSK, TSK. It's difficult for me to lose. What am I afraid of? Let's fight and burn. The dawn of the City of Dawn. Never extinguish. Chapter 686. William wanted to be a hero. In the end, he thought about it carefully. With his current identity, status, influence, strength, and all other aspects added together, he did not need to be a hero. The City of Dawn was facing a great crisis, but it was not a fatal one, because he had a wide circle of friends. He knew many supreme sages and main gods. He analyzed the results in detail. He understood one thing. Many people, powers, and races were eyeing the City of Dawn. But what about the autistic faction? They knew William's identity and thought that he was Odin. Now that he was a dual cultivator of the divine path and the sage path, he would not attack his old friend. It was not the time for him to become a true god. Reincarnation faction? Needless to say, William's entire family was a reincarnation faction. In the eyes of some people, half of his soul was also a reincarnation faction. What about the humans? Not to mention Sunfall and the Rune Mages. Because of his relationship with the Supreme Pontiff of Light, the humans would not attack him easily. William did not have a good relationship with the winged people. But even if the god Angel Michael, Gabriel, and the others wanted to attack him, they would have to think about how to deal with his father. Besides, their opponents were not the City of Dawn, but the humans and the winged people. Dwarfs? None of these fools had attained the supreme sage level. Even if they did, they would not dare to attack the City of Dawn. Only one party dared to attack the City of Dawn. The elves. Because no one knew the importance of the world tree better than the elves. No race had higher expectations for the world tree than the elves. Recently, various elves from the 7 continents had sent spies to the City of Dawn in an attempt to find the exact location of the world tree. Among them, the Rainbow Lake's Forbidden Zone had already been locked, but no one had broken it for the time being. Pom, come in. After the news of the world tree was exposed, William did not officially appear in the city. Even the sages who visited were all rejected by him. But this completely indifferent attitude really caused some public opinion to spread. The City of Dawn controlled many traveling bards, but they only dealt with commoners and low-level professionals. The circle of grandmaster and epic professionals was very different. In addition, William did not want the world tree to be exposed, so he did not sell a single drop of the life potion and the magic source. This caused a lot of negative opinions in the City of Dawn for a short period of time. For example, many people said that the Lord of the City of Dawn was filthy rich, but he did not contribute the life potion. There were so many warriors who had become disabled from fighting the dark creatures. Why could they not enjoy the benefits of a life potion? The world tree could not be monopolized by a single organization. In the end, it would only decline like the elves. The best way was to share it. The world tree belonged to the elves. The world tree belonged to the humans. The world tree belonged to the harpies. The Lord of the City of Dawn was a half-elf. Which race did the world tree belong to? In short, there were shameless fellows everywhere. They were either cursing the selfishness of the City of Dawn, or they wanted William to share the benefits of the world tree. Exclusive? Impossible. Even if the humans and the Serafkin did not attack the City of Dawn, they would use their own methods to obtain a share of the loot from the world tree. In fact, this situation was very normal in the eyes of some people. In the mythological era, when the goddess of life was in charge of the elves and the world tree, she had given away half of the life potion as a secret tool. Lautner walked into the room and saw William deep in thought. When William came to his senses, he said softly, "Lord of the city, you rejected a total of 32 holy messengers. The humans and the harpies did not do anything. At most, they said some harsh words. But the elves, tell me, what happened to the elves?" William raised his eyebrows. He picked up the boiling hot tea and drank it in one gulp. Lautner sighed softly. "Ever since the day the gods descended, you have not left the city lord's mansion. Perhaps you do not know the situation in the outside world. On the second day of the gods' descent, 3 holy elven kings were born in the Middle-earth, the Runeland and the Hopeland. They invited the elves of the various continents to a meeting. Just now, the Blackleaf Elven King returned. He passed me a message that should have been meant for you. That meeting was very bad. The 3 holy elven kings had different opinions. Under the general trend, even if the elves were to merge, they would at most merge into 3 elven tribes. But the news of the world tree suddenly appeared. They are now going to merge into 1 elven tribe and create an elven kingdom to restore the glory of the elves in the Second Era. Among them, the 3 holy elven kings will jointly preside over the overall situation. They will be known as the 3 kings. If the other elven kings do not step into the holy realm, they will never be able to be kings. But at the same time, they also announced that the Lord of the City of Dawn, who was originally the Prince of the Blackleaf Elves and had many elves under his command, will now be merged into the Elven Kingdom and become one of them. He will be given the title of Dawn Elven Saint. Lautner looked at William, who was still silent and even laughing. He could not help but say, "Lord of the city, say something." William raised his eyebrows. "Look, I was just staying at home, and I was given the title of Dawn Elven Saint for no reason. Am I very awesome? Your Highness, are you joking?" The corners of Lautner's mouth twitched. He knew that the 3 elven kings did not have good intentions. It was obvious that they wanted to snatch the world tree. They had given William an indifferent title, but since he had admitted that he was a member of the elven race, he naturally had to hand over the treasure of the elven race. Until now, this news had been spread by the elven race to the entire gods continent. William still did not speak. He stroked his chin and pondered. The 3 elven kings were using peaceful means before resorting to force. If he chose to become the Dawn Elven Saint, he would definitely lose the world tree. From then on, the City of Dawn would be tied to the flag of the elven race. From now on, no matter what enemies they faced, the 3 elven kings would definitely lend a helping hand. Even if the Lord of the elven race attacked, they would not hesitate, because this was an extremely fair trade. From the start, the City of Dawn was not considered weak. They had to weigh their own strength. Even after William handed over the World Tree, they would not hesitate to support the development of the City of Dawn so that William could advance further. But was William willing to be tied to a tree and give up the entire forest? No. In particular, the three elven kings were too overbearing in their actions. They gave him a random title, and they wanted to snatch the World Tree? What a joke. Is the messenger of the three elven kings here? Tell him that I'll wait here. If the elven kingdom wants to snatch the World Tree, I'll wait for them in the City of Dawn. William laughed coldly. He asked the uneasy Lautner to retort in the same tone as before. He did not have to think too much. Elven Kingdom, this situation is not much different from the previous life. It seems that the elves obtained the World Tree again in the previous life. William narrowed his eyes. But weren't the elves a little too confident? On the day, the gods descended. A total of 12 supreme sages were born. This did not include the Pope of Light and Rogers. Among the 12 supreme sages, for human race supreme sages, 5 winged race supreme sages, 3 elven race supreme sages. His father was a human, but he did not belong to any faction. The only faction he belonged to was the City of Dawn. Now, the human race and the winged race each had 5 supreme sages, but they did not dare to do so. The elves were really shameless. Otherwise, they must have been forced into a corner. And now, he finally understood. Why had he not heard of Roger's ability? Perhaps he had been hiding the fate of billions of creatures in his previous life. He did not have the time to show off in the gods' continent. Then, the opportunity to become a supreme sage should be now. William laughed coldly. War. The elves needed the luck brought by the World Tree. They wanted someone in their race to become a true god. But William also needed a war to break out in the City of Dawn. He wanted to gain enough experience to become a supreme sage. Until now, his main body was only 20 levels away from becoming a supreme sage at level 360. Odin had spread his faith wantonly in the Middle-earth continent. He had tens of millions of believers. He was not far from the main god level. He was about to reach the peak of the gods. William wanted to try. How would the Elven Kingdom start a war with him? Would the supreme sages attack him? William only had a 30% chance of that happening. Because if the 3 elven kings attacked, his father would not sit idly by. William knew many supreme sages and main gods. The elves did not dare to bet that he would not call for reinforcements. Then, a war between the supreme sages would occur. This was something that no one wanted to see. If the elves wanted to snatch the World Tree, there was only one way. That was to crush the City of Dawn in a dignified manner. At this moment, William gazed into the distance. He seemed to have seen through the layers of space and saw the elven army in the shattered small world. He could almost see the elves already donning their armor and waiting to officially enter the battlefield. He seemed to see many space sages and legendary great enchanters preparing to open the portal to the City of Dawn. William smiled and gave his father a thumbs up. These images were all sent by him. The elves intended to use peaceful means before resorting to force. They were even preparing. They had no intention of declaring war. They were going to launch a surprise attack. In that case, listen to my command. William gave his command. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. One by one, the legendary professionals appeared. On that day, the professionals who had attained the Sage Realm came to the City Lord's mansion. At this moment, he glanced at Burned Cinder, Diablo, and Sarimas, who had attained the Sage Realm. Then, he looked at the others and saw their expectant gazes. He saw their confident gazes. He said in a deep voice, "If there are no accidents, within 3 days, the Elven Kingdom will open many space tunnels to launch a surprise attack on the City of Dawn. Make the preparations. The regular army of the City of Dawn will return to the city. The Dawn mercenary team will give up on all external missions and return to the city." "Yes, Lord William." Everyone replied in unison. Burned Cinder suddenly asked, "Do we have to inform the Chosen Ones in advance?" "Heaven's Chosen One?" William raised his eyebrows and chuckled. "Of course I have to." In the next moment, ding-dong, countless players in the City of Dawn heard a crisp sound in their minds. Prompt: You have received an SSS-level mission. Defend the City of Dawn and repel possible enemies. Prompt: The City of Dawn shops are fully opened. Prompt: go to the City of Dawn shops and receive a free epic quality weapon of the same level. Prompt: during the war, all items in the City of Dawn shops will be 30% off. Prompt: during the war, the City of Dawn shops will be selling unlimited forbidden skill scrolls. Prompt: during the war, the City of Dawn shops will be selling unlimited complete legendary manuals. Prompt: during the war, 10,000 experience points can be exchanged for 10 contribution points. It was too much. There were too many prompts. The players were dumbfounded. But after 10 seconds, another sound rang, ding-dong. Prompt: the City of Dawn is facing its greatest crisis in history. Your lord, William Dawn, needs your help. Almost at the same time, countless players roared in excitement and agitation. They rushed into the City of Dawn, and the teleportation hall was about to explode. Players from the Dawn faction from other continents also rushed to the City of Dawn. Some players who were not from the City of Dawn also came to the City of Dawn after hearing about the super main storyline mission. Some even left the faction and joined the City of Dawn to fight. When one side was in trouble, help would come from all sides. William had treated the players well in the past. Now, the players were treating him well. On the forum, a post by Chu Liuqiu was pinned at the top. "Fight, fight, fight," he said. "In the past 5 versions, I have never seen Prince William issue such a mission. I just want to say that the City of Dawn needs us. I don't know if the enemy will attack the other cities, but it is obvious that the enemy is trying to snatch the world tree. So I want to say, let's go to the City of Dawn. Temporarily abandon the other cities and come to the City of Dawn. Prince William, they need us, just like how we need the City of Dawn and Prince William to help us when we're being bullied. The City of Dawn is the best faction I have seen in all the games. William is also the best Lord NPC I've ever seen. He's like a living person. I really can't bear to see him die. I treat the City of Dawn as my home. I want to fight for the City of Dawn, for my home, for Prince William, until I die. My level is 0. On the 2nd floor, forever alone, until I die. My level is 0. On the 3rd floor, cute fairy, until I die. My level is 0. On the 4th floor, what can you do against me? Until I die. My level is 0. On the 5th floor, Shao Ian, until I die. There were too many people. In just 1 hour. This post had been shared by millions of people. Many players who did not browse the forum and did not reply to the post sneered and went to the City of Dawn. They scolded and said that it was useless to reply to the posts. Instead of attacking on the internet, it was better to fight in real life. William looked at the forum, the City of Dawn, and the sound transmissions he sent. He looked at the arrival of his friends. He only wanted to say to the 3 elven kings, "You want war? Then I will give you war. The light of the City of Dawn will never be extinguished. The light of the City of Dawn will last forever." Chapter 687. The City of Dawn, the most powerful faction in the Gods continent, was operating at full speed. William had abandoned almost all the other cities, including the Beast Citadel, the East Sea Metropolis, and so on. He sent all the soldiers he could to the City of Dawn. But even so, His Royal Highness understood that he was fighting against an entire race, and the number of enemies was simply too many. The City of Dawn had a population of 97 million. The regular legions had a total of 8 million soldiers. The Dawn mercenary team had 3 million NPC mercenaries. The number of players had reached 3 million, which was the highest in the City of Dawn. In this defensive battle, besides the World Tree and the Dawn Elves, which had not been exposed, William had blocked almost everything. He had used more than 20 million soldiers to protect the city with a population of tens of millions to prevent the World Tree from being taken away. But what about the elves? It could be said that even if the number of elves was small, the Elven Kingdom, which was formed by all the elves in the 7 continents, had at least 500 million elves. Of course, the elves who had experienced the Second Era could not be compared to the human and Seraphian in terms of numbers. But the elves had inherited many legacies from the Second Era, so no one dared to underestimate them. If they started a war of extermination, The elves could turn all of their citizens into soldiers. They could still take a bite out of the enemy's flesh when they tried to attack them. In this battle for the World Tree, William did not know how many soldiers the elves would send, but it was obvious that it would not be too many or too few. If the elves sent too many soldiers, it would mean that the elves did not want to survive. If they were held back by the City of Dawn, the Seraphian and the human race might take advantage of the situation. The dwarfs and the elves were in a honeymoon period, but now they were separated. They might not help. If the elves sent too few soldiers, for example, the number of soldiers was similar to that of the City of Dawn. If the elves wanted to win, there was only one condition. Elites. Super legions with various abilities. Super legions that had appeared in the Second Era. If not, it would be a trump card legion formed by countless Grandmaster elves. After all, in the battlefield of the intelligent races in the gods' continent, sages could not kill the weak. This was a rule set by many races. Saints had their own battlefields, and legends had their own battlefields. Only epics could take on the role of an army commander. They could do some damage on the battlefield, but they would be held back by professionals of the same realm. However, it was very difficult for saints and legends to appear on the battlefield, unless the party who broke the rules had absolute power and completely disregarded the many races who had set the rules. But William couldn't do it. The three elven kings seemed powerful, but they couldn't do it. As for the super army, the elf race's most powerful army was none other than the Life Chain Army. It was truly amazing. All of them were scientists, and as long as they didn't stray too far from the army, they were practically immortal. Currently, the Elven Kingdom had at least 17 to 18 such legions. As for the number of legions that could come to the City of Dawn, there were less than half of them. His Royal Highness had a heavy heart in his heart. In fact, he didn't have much of a way to deal with this kind of army that was full of cheats if the Saint Realm powerhouses couldn't intervene. Of course, besides the Dragon's Blood Legion and the Life Chain Legion, he had also created several super legions in the City of Dawn. These legions could at least hold back the Bloodlock Legion on the battlefield. If his plan worked, he might even be invincible on the battlefield. As for the other elven legions, he was helpless. He could only fight them head-on, because the City of Dawn was facing the elves. They were the elves who had the strongest individual combat power among the three major races. They were the Second Era's elves who could single-handedly fight against the entire Dark World. They were the most powerful regular legions of the City of Dawn. What if he thought that they were weak? If he thought that the City of Dawn could defeat the other factions and become invincible, he was definitely wrong. But I have more than 10 million players. Among them, more than 7 million players have already reached the Grandmaster level. William couldn't help but sneer. War of attrition, suicidal tactics, mudslides, have I ever been afraid of anyone? As long as I have enough health points and can break through the defense, I can even kill a god. William boosted the morale of the soldiers in the barracks. Legendary commanders who had graduated from the Dawn Battle Energy College and Magic College were also instructing the players on where to defend. There were 5 versions of baptism. The players had been on the battlefield many times, especially the veteran players in version 1. 0. They were very familiar with the command system of the City of Dawn's legions. They could clearly see the various command flags. Now, all of them were experienced veterans. Even if the new players didn't understand, they would not make too many mistakes. Although the City of Dawn was large enough and had been expanding over the past 5 versions, it now had a large territory. But every time the city expanded, a new wall would be built. Until now, the City of Dawn was close to the southern coastal sea. In addition, William had a premonition that a war was about to break out. In just 3 days, Moses led many great enchanters to strengthen the height of all the city walls to 150 meters. 150 meters? It looked very tall, but was it useful against advanced and Grandmaster professionals who could fly? Of course it was useful. The advanced flying skills were useless. They were just live targets. The Grandmaster's flying speed was very fast and agile, but in the eyes of the professionals of the same level, it was not as agile as flying on the ground. Besides epic professionals, flying in the air was still a problem. After a few decades, the City of Dawn's city walls were divided into dozens of districts. The city walls of each district could be considered a line of defense. The forbidden area of the Rainbow Lake was not located in the center of the city, but there were still 3 districts outside. This meant that if they attacked from the east, south, and west, they would have to destroy at least 3 lines of defense before they could approach the forbidden area of the Rainbow Lake. It was at that time. Only then would the battle for the position of Sage erupt. At this moment, the City of Dawn was relocating its citizens to Stormy Island, the East Sea metropolis, and the Bee Citadel. But William's charisma was too great. Even though the legions were driving the people away, there were still too many people who were reluctant to leave the city. Prince William, where is Prince William? We're not afraid. Captain, please tell him, please. A middle-aged man pulled the arm of a soldier and shouted desperately, "We're not afraid of death. Even if the enemy attacks, even if we're weak, we'll sacrifice our lives for the City of Dawn. It's hateful. Why am I only a beginner professional? Even if I want to stay here, I don't have the chance to do so. Let's go. Let's go. The City Lord is doing this for us. With our strength, we can't stay here. Even if we're just escorts, we can't." A shopkeeper was in tears as he brought his grandson to the teleportation hall. But his grandson said in a clear voice, "Grandpa, the City of Dawn has never lost. In the future, I want to be like my father and become a true warrior of the City of Dawn." The shopkeeper tilted his head and wiped away the tears at the corner of his eyes. Good, good. Be like your father and become a warrior of the City of Dawn. Become a warrior to protect your homeland. The City Lord said that your father died in the dark world. You have to eat more in the future so that you can grow taller and take revenge for your father. Yes, Grandpa, I'll work hard. The little boy held his grandfather's hand tightly as he left his home. Now, the streets of the City of Dawn were filled with citizens carrying parcels. They were all going to the teleportation hall to other cities. As for the safety of those cities, to be honest, as long as William was alive, the City of Dawn would not fall. No one would dare to touch the other cities. At most, some bounty hunters and mercenaries who did not understand the situation might cause trouble. The elves' motive was simple. They were after the World Tree. There was no blood feud between the elves and the City of Dawn. It was purely a fight for benefits. The elves would not do anything disgusting. This war was purely about fighting head-on. There were no conspiracies. Time slowly passed. 3 days later, the Dawn Army and the players were on standby. The Dawn Army had already secured their respective positions, while the players were divided into guilds and chose their own areas to defend. Under the leadership of Chu Liuqiu and the others, the casual players formed 1,000-man teams and guarded the long city walls. Usually, when an area was defended by NPCs, another area would be defended by players and then by NPCs. There were some disadvantages to this mode of defense. For example, the defense line of the players was more fragile and could be easily penetrated. But there were also many benefits. As long as the players could resist the first wave of attacks, they would be able to hold back any elven legion. When the enemies entered the legion, they would definitely die. They could revive 6 times a day. This was the biggest advantage of the players. They could revive on the spot. It was very cool. Even though the city walls of the City of Dawn were very long, the 20 million soldiers could not fully spread out. Only 1/3 of the soldiers could stand on the city walls. 2/3 of the remaining guards could be changed. This reduced the pressure on William. Meanwhile, the magical weapons of the City of Dawn appeared frequently. Magical destruction guns. There were magic cannons, continuous, accumulative, and instantaneous cannons. Each of these cannons had different powers and effects. Cannon gunners could use the magical hand cannon and magical pistols. The wealthier players took advantage of the discount in the City of Dawn shop to buy them. Of course, the magical cannons, and arrow towers were not placed on the city walls. Instead, they were placed on the cannons at the back. Not only could they avoid enemy attacks, but they could also give more space to the warriors of the City of Dawn. There were hundreds of thousands of cannons and arrow towers. They were like a forest of towers that suddenly rose from within the city walls. What about the magical Gatling gun? When William created it, It could not be used on intelligent races. But now, what about the elves? He still did not want to use it. Or rather, he did not want the elves to use the pirated magical Gatling gun on him. The Gatling gun was too destructive. At this moment, countless spatial fluctuations spread. Many teleportation portals opened in all directions of the City of Dawn. The elven army surged out like a steel torrent. There were too many of them. Too many. The 3 elven kings sent in 30 million soldiers. But at this moment, William gently waved his hand on the temporary Dawn Tower in the center of the City of Dawn. Buzz. Visible ripples spread across the entire City of Dawn. Life Halo. Magic Halo. Legendary Lord Halo. In the next second, the entire city was trembling slightly, and countless places were glowing. Moses' all elements rune magic formation was activated. The magical stone mine was burning. But everyone in the city received a huge boost. All attributes increased by 10%. Attack and defense increased by 20%. Attribute attacks increased by 20%. A wave of attacks came. Countless players and professionals were shocked. Gosh, just how many auras and buffs did he have? The players, in particular, looked at the list of buffs next to their avatars. Damn it, including their own skills, spells, and magic arrays, there were dozens of buffs, which basically doubled their stats. 2 words. Awesome to the point of breaking the heavens. In the next second, William's voice reverberated throughout the world. City of Dawn, fight! Chapter 688. Many Halo buffs stacked on top of each other, doubling the attributes of the warriors and players of the City of Dawn. But this was not the most important thing. Why were the elves so powerful and invincible? They were the 2 halos of the World Tree. The Life Halo could extend one's lifespan by staying under the halo for a long time. In addition, one's health points recovery speed would increase by 2% every second. The Magic Halo could increase one's maximum mana points and training speed. In addition, one's mana and battle energy recovery speed would increase by 2% every second, and the cooldown time of one's skills would be reduced by 20%. What was this? To the Grandmaster professionals, this was super unlimited firepower. It also came with the Super Fanatic armor that could recover health points at any time. It was simply an existence that could explode the heavens. Otherwise, how could the elves become the masters of the Second Era? How could they fight against so many dark creatures? In short, under the halo of the World Tree, they were invincible. More importantly, these things are not explosive skills. You can even think of them as permanent buffs on the battlefield. If the players and warriors used their explosive skills, their attributes, attack, and defense would naturally increase. In this magical fantasy world, if they wanted to defeat magic, the enemies could not use technology. Chu Liuqiu and the others looked at the temporary teleportation portals that filled the sky. The elven legions emitted dazzling lights. Various magic formations appeared at the same time and stacked on top of each other, giving them an unimaginable boost in attributes. In particular, the elven legions were organized neatly like cubes. They were all dumbfounded. The players were dumbfounded and caught off guard. For so many years, the development of the City of Dawn was inseparable from the support of the elves. But now, it was the elves who attacked the City of Dawn. How is this possible? Did the City of Dawn fall out with the elves? It must be the elves who want to snatch the World Tree. When the players discovered that the unknown enemy was the elves, they did not panic. The warriors of the City of Dawn did not know what fear was. They did not care who the enemy was and why the enemy was attacking them. There was only one thing they had to do. They had to obey orders. They had to kill all the enemies. There were many elves in the City of Dawn, but they did not hesitate to unsheathe their swords and prepare for battle. With William's charm, he never had to consider the loyalty of his warriors. But it was precisely because there were too many professionals in the southeast region. The magic array formed by the Legion was simply too dense. As a result, black clouds filled with mana condensed in the sky. The wind was howling. The flags of both sides fluttered in the wind, making whistling sounds. The 10 million-strong army of the City of Dawn did not move. They stood on the city walls in an orderly manner. In the inner city, the players saw that the regular army was as still as a mountain, so they did not feel too nervous. They just waited for the elves, who had surrounded the entire city, to attack. In particular, some players had mentioned on the forum that the news of the World Tree had been leaked in the City of Dawn. This had attracted the attention of many forces. If there was an enemy attacking the City of Dawn, it was most likely the elves. After the initial shock, they were no longer as afraid. This was an inexplicable confidence. This was the confidence of the City of Dawn. They had been invincible throughout the 5 versions. Just when everyone was waiting for the enemy to attack, a humming pillar of light descended from the sky. It landed right on top of the northern plains of Slaughter. At this moment, waves surged. The shock waves engulfed the entire plains. The monstrous shock waves hit the cliff of the City of Dawn, but they were unable to damage the cliff, which was reinforced with countless magic spells. When the shock waves hit the Elven Legion, they dissipated. However, the plains on the east and west sides were all destroyed and turned into scorched land. It was Kelendir, one of the 3 Elven kings. Clad in armor, he slowly floated up to 100 meters in the air. His silver-white hair fluttered in the wind, and his light blue eyes had an extraordinary charm. In terms of appearance, there was no need to say anything. The elf army was made up of male models, and they were extremely handsome. But when William also flew out, everything was afraid of comparison. After a comparison, the Elven King's attractiveness fell by more than 1 level. When the Elven Legion saw William, they could not help but waver. Why? Why was their enemy so handsome? They could not bear to attack him. Ahem. At this moment, the armies of both sides held their breaths. Kelendir looked at William and said in a penetrating and magnetic voice, "The World Tree belongs to the Elven race. Lord of the City of Dawn, you're also the Prince of the Blackleaf Elves. By offering the World Tree, you're the greatest hero of the Elven race." William raised his eyebrows. "Oh, the greatest hero? But you're still the Elven King? If you want to become the Elven King, you just have to become a supreme sage," Kelendir said calmly. "Is there a custom for a half-elf to become an Elven King? The king below the 3 kings is also a king." As a supreme sage, Kelendir disdained lying. In their eyes, it was already a great deal of tolerance for a half-elf like William to become a king. Or the 3 Elven Kings. They had existed since the First Era. In the Second Era, they were the super antiques of the various Elven Kings. At the end of the Second Era, they basically lived in a small, shattered world. They had not experienced the Third Era. This caused them to be jealous and arrogant. They valued their bloodline far more than the elves who lived in the Gods' continent. But they had no choice. The 3 Elven Kings had the most profound knowledge. Only the 3 of them had successfully become a supreme sage. But such a laughable statement. Many warriors of the City of Dawn sneered. William could not be bothered to talk nonsense with these arrogant Elven Kings who had suddenly broken through. He calmly glanced at Kelendir and said in a deep voice, "The World Tree is behind me. Kill me and take it away." Kelendir raised his eyebrows. "You won't die, but the World Tree can only belong to the elves." In the next second, Kelendir did not want to talk nonsense. If they could not come to an agreement, then they would fight. He waved his hand. North, south, east, and west. The Elven army marched forward at the same time and slowly approached. William and Kelendir were still staring at each other. There was nothing much to say. At their level, they knew that there was a true God above their heads that controlled everything. They also knew that only by becoming a true God could they save everything and free the entire continent from the control of the true God. But there were very few ways to become a true God. Perhaps there was only one way left. No supreme sage would be willing to give up the opportunity to become a true God for the sake of others, even if the world was controlled by others. Selfish. This was the nature of intelligent races, no matter what the situation was. Even if one wanted to be a savior, it was best to become a true God. Then this war. It was impossible to avoid it. Meanwhile, the other 2 Elven Kings were communicating with Kelendir telepathically. According to our calculations, Roger's Providence is planning something. He wants to shield the destinies of all living beings to prevent the calculations and plans of that person. Hence, he is at a critical juncture and cannot descend to the mortal world to rescue the Lord of the City of Dawn. Kellandir narrowed his eyes. Are you sure? Roger's methods are not to be underestimated. The goddess of life is beside him. She was once the true owner of the World Tree. I don't want any accidents to happen. Don't worry. The goddess of life must have consumed a lot of energy to assist Rogers in shielding the destinies. She has not become a supreme sage, so her descent will not help. Good. Both of you will hold back Rogers and Alice, who might descend to the mortal world. Leave the Lord of the City of Dawn to me. Kellandir nodded. They were determined to obtain the World Tree. Will the Pope of Light intervene? Rumor has it that the Lord of the City of Dawn is the reincarnation of a god. Will he seek help from other gods? Kellandir calmly shook his head. If they want to start an all-out war, they can do so. When that time comes, not only the elves, but the Serafkin and the human race will also be involved in the war. No one will give up on the path to becoming a true god. The three of them stopped talking. They sat down and observed the situation on the battlefield. There were 30 million elven legions. The weakest legions were advanced legions, and 2/3 of them were Grandmaster legions. The moment before the superwar broke out, behind the two armies, airships rose one after another. The surface of these airships were covered with complicated and mysterious runes. The densely packed magic cannons were scattered all around. They were like moving nuclear missiles, full of unimaginable threat. When the air fleets of both sides approached each other, there was no need for the commander to say anything. The rumbling sounds of cannons could be heard instantly. Beams of colorful light beams and cannons bombarded the surface of the enemy's airships at almost the same time. Various magical barriers appeared and blocked the magic cannons. Energy shock waves wreaked havoc in the entire sky, but the magic cannons were too concentrated. Many of the magic airships couldn't resist for more than 3 seconds before they were bombarded by countless magic cannons. They exploded and turned into huge fireballs thousands of meters high in the sky. Within a short span of 7 or 8 seconds, more than a dozen magic ships fell from the sky in a disorderly manner. Both sides wanted to use airships to attack the enemy's army corps. But if they wanted to attack the enemy, they had to destroy all of the enemy's airships. Meanwhile, legendary professionals from both sides charged toward the enemy's magic airships. The legendary professionals could attack the enemy's magic airships. The legendary professionals could attack the enemy's leader. There was a huge war. The war was imminent. Besides that, the elven legions used the magic formation as their core. Moreover, the legions in front were made up of Grandmaster shield bearers. When they charged, they formed a huge light shield that was thousands of meters in front of them. They withstood the magic cannons and advanced continuously. But the most eye-catching thing was the fastest and most ferocious legions were the 7 life chain legions. They were fearless and defenseless. They withstood the fiercest cannons and charged toward the City of Dawn unscathed. But at this moment, with the sound of the dawn horn, the super legions of the City of Dawn appeared at the same time. Albert's Dragon's Blood Chain Legion, Julio's Glory Legion, Christian's Fearless Legion. One by one, the super legions appeared. They all of them had the buff from the ever-victorious legion. They were all grandmasters and epic warriors. They were all wearing legendary set armor and wielding legendary weapons. They did not have the life chain, but they fought under the halo of the World Tree. The World Tree would not die. They would not die. William narrowed his eyes. This move was taught to him by his mother. It was a move that was not taught to the elves. And the life chain? To be honest, it was a move that his mother had created based on this move. And these legions had a general name. They were called the Undead Legion, the World Tree Legion. Chapter 689. The life chain army of the elves would be resisted by the World Tree army. Both sides were unkillable professionals. When these armies first collided, it was like 2 metal torrents colliding together, causing countless broken arms, metal fragments, and blood to fill the sky. However, the life of the elven race's life chain legion was linked together. As long as they had enough lifespan, they wouldn't die completely. Almost in the blink of an eye, the elven warriors all recovered to their original state. They continued to hold their weapons or engage in close-quarters combat with their fists. They used all kinds of techniques to lock the enemy down. They did not want to kill the enemy, but they wanted to trap the enemy. Everyone cultivated battle energy. As long as they condensed their battle energy, their fists would be able to explode with sufficient strength and lethality. Since they would not die, they would just fight. The World Tree Army of the City of Dawn was also unparalleled. Their lives were connected to the World Tree. As long as the World Tree did not fall, their vitality would be endless. Even if their arms, legs, or heads were chopped off, they would quickly recover in the next second. When the undying armies of both sides fought, it was a super chaotic battle, and the players were dumbfounded. Gosh, didn't we say that we're the undying? Why can the NPCs do this too? Forever Alone held the mana annihilation cannon and watched the scene through the scope. He was so frightened that he was speechless. He could not help but mutter, "Unfair, unfair. Player's greatest advantage is gone." Shoot, you're a cannon master. Why are you using the magic energy annihilation cannon as a telescope? Chu Yochio slapped him on the head. The latter rubbed his head and began to snipe at some Grandmaster warriors one-on-one. However, the players and NPCs were not fools. When they saw that they could not defeat the Life Chain Army, they completely ignored the Life Chain Army and aimed their guns and arrows at the elven warriors of the other armies. Rumble. Bang, bang, bang. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The sounds of cannons firing were continuous. The magic energy annihilation cannon fired one after another. The heavy arrows and the arrows of the rangers filled the entire sky. Airwaves, flames, beams of multicolored light blossomed in the sky. The battlefield was too big. The elf army surrounded the city and simultaneously attacked all four sides of the city wall. There were countless figures everywhere, and people continuously fell from the sky. Magic cannons shot into the crowd from time to time, and if the people dodged, it would be fine. However, if it really hit an unlucky person, the energy shockwave produced by the explosion would instantly spread out. Even if the elven warriors activated their battle energy shields and defensive measures, as long as they were near the core, they would be turned into ashes in an instant. The rest of the people would be like dumplings being thrown into a pot, falling down with a pitter-patter. Of course, the elves also had all kinds of weapons. Tens of thousands of magic cannons fired at the same time. The huge barrier of the City of Dawn was continuously blasted open, and the barrier closed up again and again. It would have been fine if the magic cannons hit the city walls. The city walls had been reinforced by countless magicians, and their defensive power was enough to resist any magic cannons. However, if it were to hit the top of the city wall, the resulting shockwave and destructive power would be enough to wipe out all living creatures within a radius of dozens of meters. This was the top battle of the continent. Both sides possessed the best armies, warriors, weapons, and all kinds of magic scrolls. When these things exploded at the same time, the battlefield was truly too magnificent, bloody, and ruthless. Bang! There was an explosion, and the energy of the magic cannons swept everything within a radius of dozens of meters. Dozens of players in the area transformed into white light. When they saw the elven warriors charging at them, they quickly resurrected on the spot. This included the unlucky Chongli Jioga, Xiao Ayin, and the others. The professionals of the Glory Club led many of the guild's professional players to guard a large area. However, they were also targeted by the magic cannons. Within a short period of time, they had encountered 2 rounds of attacks. If not for the fast recovery of the defensive barrier, which blocked some of the magic cannons, they would have died 6 times. When Chongli Jioga resurrected, 2 elven shield bearers had already charged to the city wall. Both parties looked at each other, and the shield bearers simultaneously unleashed their full strength. They raised their shields and charged. "Be careful," Xiao Ayin exclaimed, but she couldn't free herself to help. Chongli Jioga didn't have time to reply. His eyes turned golden, and his pupils became vertical. Instantly, dragon scales appeared in his eyes. He took out two flaming sabers from his space ring and slashed at the shield bearers. Bang! The two elven shield bearers felt an indescribable force. Their arms went numb, and they stopped retreating. Their bodies involuntarily leaned back. However, the brothers behind them caught up and immediately used their arms to push them back. The two shield bearers ignored the marks on their shields and drew their sabers with their right hands. However, Chanli Jyoga had so many buffs and auras. In addition, he had activated his dragon blood and transformed into a dragon blood warrior. At this moment, he was truly unparalleled. Even in terms of attributes, he was not weaker than the average epic bloodline NPC. There was a flash of sword light, and battle energy collided with metal. In just a short 10 seconds, Chanli Jyoga had killed the two Grandmaster Elven warriors. Damn, the captain is too strong. Do his attributes have to be so high? Do you know how to talk? That's called maneuvering. This is top-notch maneuvering. Chanli Jyoga curled his lips. Don't talk nonsense. The buffs are too powerful, especially the legendary Lord talent of the City Lord. It gives us too many attributes. It's equivalent to an increase of more than 50% of our attributes. It's just too awesome. Even if we don't transform and use forbidden skills, our attributes are basically similar to the NPCs. There are a total of 600 Dragon Blood Warriors among our 3,000 people. Don't transform unless there are too many enemies or a legendary bloodline boss charging to the top of the city wall. When that time comes, transform in batches to resolve the crisis. Okay, the others nodded and immediately passed down the order. The battle in the City of Dawn was intense. The elves had launched an all-out attack right from the start. This was a magical world. There was no such thing as a siege or a siege. In particular, everyone could fly. There was no such thing as a lack of suitable charging positions. Right from the start, the battle had already entered a white-hot stage. Every second, hundreds of people died in battle. But as time passed, the three elven kings felt that something was amiss. That was, how did the weak, chosen ones become so ferocious? What the heck? Originally, this group of elves were weaker than those of the same level. They were weaker after each revival. They were originally trash. But with the enhancement of the Lord of the City of Dawn's magic, their attributes were similar to the elves. It was simply a scam. The powerful warriors of the City of Dawn seemed to have eaten a great tonic. All of them became ferocious, and their recovery speed was especially fast. Those who didn't know had been possessed by the Death Servants. The current situation was just that bad. If the warriors from both sides fought, the elves would definitely die a horrible death. But which of the two halos were the most powerful? Of course, it was the Life Halo and Magic Halo formed by the World Tree. The other was William's legendary Lord Halo. When these three halos were added together, it was simply abnormal to the point of making one's hair stand on end. Moreover, this did not include the buffs of some legions. In particular, Kellandir discovered a problem. The souls of all the soldiers of the City of Dawn who had died in battle were taken away when they floated into the Styx River. This made him feel an indescribable sense of danger. Forget it. I must obtain the World Tree. At most, I'll increase the number of soldiers by 10 million. Even if the City of Dawn can do anything, I'll take over the City of Dawn. Kellandir clenched his fists. He increased the intensity of the attacks from the east, south, and west. The attack from the north was mainly responsible for restraining the enemies. William activated the Ring of Reincarnation with all his might, and all the souls of the dead soldiers of the City of Dawn were absorbed into it. Meanwhile, the World Tree was fully activating its energy, and more Dawn Elves were born. Or rather, they were all reincarnated. But from the moment they were born, they were in the state of adult elves. Some of them had just been reincarnated, and they did not know how to react. Some of them even drew their swords to fight. In the end, their entire bodies were in a smooth state, and they were so frightened that they covered their bodies and did not dare to move. After that, they were thrown into the small world and had to train again. But could this method of increasing the number of soldiers be compared to the large number of elves? Logically, definitely not. After all, reincarnation required time as well. But where was Lys born? It was the magic source of the entire gods and the darkness continent. It was the origin of the magic recovery. At this moment, the roots of the world tree had penetrated through the void and penetrated into the magic source. It was absorbing endless energy and using it to increase the number of soldiers. Every minute, 10,000 Dawn elves were born. What was more important was this was not in the city of Dawn, but in the small world. As for the control of the small world, William had already passed it to her. When an all-round magic goddess stepped into the supreme sage realm and controlled the small world where the world tree was born, what would happen? She would be able to change the flow of time. Change the flow of time. Was it simple? No. It was too difficult, because when the flow of time changed, other things would also change. If other corresponding things could not be changed, the resulting chain reaction would cause everything within the range to die instantly. The experimenter would also die from the backlash. This was something that even the Lord of Time did not dare to try. He only dared to change the flow of time for a person. He did not dare to change the flow of time for a town, a country, or a continent. But he did not dare to. Liz dared to, because she was the all-round magic goddess. Because changing the flow of time had nothing to do with luck or misfortune. The world tree was absorbing the energy of the magic source and providing the energy to Liz. Then, with the all-round magic of Moses, the flow of time in the small world would change. It would speed up and speed up. William had already thought of such a move, but he did not dare to try it. But now, he had been forced into a corner. Then, the plan to increase the number of soldiers had begun. No one could stop him, and the price of doing so, it meant that there would be no more magic recovery in the future. That was what William wanted to do. He wanted to use the magic recovery of the entire continent to help the city of Dawn. Selfish? Perhaps. But this was the way to create miracles. Chapter 690. The elves could throw their pride out of the atmosphere. For the city of Dawn, for himself, and for the people who trusted him, William was willing to sacrifice the future of the gods' continent. Furthermore, besides Moses, no one else knew about William's plan. In particular, he wanted to see for himself if the world tree absorbed all the mana source. Would the small world in its body become a true large world, one that was not inferior to the world of gods? If he had such a huge world as his backing, William was confident that he could fight against any existence. The war continued. On this magnificent battlefield, close combat had already begun. Waves of elves charged to the top of the city wall. Most of them were killed by the warriors of the city of Dawn before they could stand firm. Some of them retreated to the bottom of the city wall. In this kind of defensive battle on the city wall, the shield bearers of the city of Dawn had suffered great losses. They stood in rows at the front. Not only did they have to face the magic cannons, but they also had to face the continuous attacks of the elves. But they could not retreat even half a step, because their homes were behind them. Even though their friends and family had been relocated, no one wanted their homes to be destroyed. But it was precisely this kind of desperate battle. Many warriors of the city of Dawn rushed to the city wall with the belief that they were going to die. They were going to face the incoming powerful enemies. The shadows of swords and blades covered every inch of their vision. The sounds of metal and stone colliding formed a symphony. In this vast battlefield, black smoke billowed. The roars shook the heavens and the earth. Blood had turned into rivers. Corpses had piled up into mountains. There were corpses everywhere on the city walls. People had their limbs chopped off, and soldiers were falling from the city walls. The bloody war between the city of Dawn and the elves had stunned countless forces and races. Or rather, no one had expected that the city of Dawn under William's command had grown to such a stage. Even when facing the fierce attacks of the elves, the city of Dawn did not fall into a disadvantageous position. In some defensive areas, the city of Dawn even had a great advantage. The constant resurrection of the players, in particular, allowed the elves to witness the power of players. But the most important thing was the players did not flee at the last minute. They would rather die 6 times and have their auras plummet than fight the elves to the death. The Supreme Pontiff of Light stroked his chin curiously. He could not help but video chat with Ursula. The Temple of Light has many chosen ones. Will they die so easily? 3 times at most. After dying 3 times, they'll basically start running away. They'd rather not do the quest than continue dying. Unless there's no way out, the quest punishment will be extremely severe. Ursula raised his eyebrows and asked in a low voice, "Why? Do you want to go to the City of Dawn to learn and save him?" The Holy Father of Light shook his head. "Forget it. This is his own path. He chose it himself. As for seeking the scriptures, this group of slutty, chosen ones will die sooner or later. As long as that person disappears, this group of foreign chosen ones will probably disappear too. There's no need to invest too much effort in a group of lunatics." Yes, William's mental state has always been abnormal. You won't learn anything from him. Ursula solemnly nodded his head. It would be best if his super sage disciple did not learn from William. If he were to learn from William, the teachings of the light would go astray. Besides that, some Lord Gods and Supreme Sages also turned their attention to the City of Dawn. They were more curious about who the World Tree would belong to in the end. Besides Roger's providence, he was also curious about which super sage could help the City of Dawn. Even if William was Odin, it would be difficult to bring the friendship of the past to the present. As time passed, the defensive line of the City of Dawn was as sturdy as ever. However, there was no change in the offensive and defensive attitudes of the two sides. No matter how many people died, no matter how exaggerated the losses were, the legendary commanders on both sides of the battlefield indifferently ordered legions to rush up the city wall one after another. When there were only 1/3 of them left, they would send another legion to replace them. On the battlefield of the City of Dawn, it was like a giant meat grinder. Advanced, Grandmaster, even an epic professional might not be able to return from a Super Grandmaster Legion. A full 12 hours of bloody battle. Both sides had lost millions of soldiers. Until now, besides the Elves' Life Chain Legion and the City of Dawn's World Tree Legion, only the Ranger Legion and the Mage Legion were in good condition. The other legions at the front line were not in good condition. The legions were scattered, destroyed, and completely annihilated. The flag fell into a pool of blood. From then on, the organization only existed in history. When the warriors rushed up the city wall, they did not even have the chance to swing their swords before they were blasted into pieces by the magic cannons. But the iron will of the warriors of the City of Dawn and the elves was admirable. An order was given. From then on, there was no life or death. They could only fight to the death. There are strong magical waves in front. I think the Mage Legion is casting a combined forbidden spell. Block it. A mage who was stained with blood shouted. Stop him. Block the forbidden spell outside the city. More than 5,000 mages stood on a magic platform. They raised their magic staffs and aimed at the sky. In an instant, a fire dragon with a wingspan of hundreds of meters soared in the sky. A few seconds later, the fire dragon's scales, whiskers, and pupils were almost solid. Swoosh! A giant ice pillar that was thousands of meters long suddenly shot out from afar. The leader of the Mage Legion did not dare to hesitate. He immediately gave an order. Everyone gathered their magic staffs and pointed at the ice pillar. Bang! In the night sky, a dazzling river of ice and fire suddenly appeared. The surrounding temperature kept changing. Fire rain and hail rained down from the sky. Fortunately, another crisis had been resolved. But as the Mage Legion cast the combined forbidden spell many times, their energy consumption could not keep up. It was still fine in the City of Dawn because of the halo of the World Tree. The Mage Legion of the Elves was taking potions and consuming their life force to cast the forbidden spell. But it did not matter. Even if the advanced professionals died, they would have grandmasters. Even if the grandmasters died, they would have epic experts. When most of the advanced and grandmaster professionals died, the epic experts would officially appear on the battlefield. They would not be like before, where they could only use their abilities to defend. They did not dare to attack recklessly and kill groups of grandmasters. Soon, 3 days later, at this moment, the City of Dawn could not hold on any longer. The continuous attacks from all directions, day and night, had caused the City of Dawn to suffer great losses. More than 6 million NPC warriors had perished. This represented almost half of the City of Dawn's military strength. The average level of the players had dropped by 6 levels. This meant that the players had to die 6 times a day and drop by 2 levels. If not for the City of Dawn constantly providing free equipment and weapons, the players would not have been able to survive here. But what about the elves? More than 15 million elven warriors had perished in the City of Dawn. This was an unimaginable loss. It was equivalent to destroying 1.5 elven kingdoms. On the other hand, the players had become much stronger. When the 3 elven kings saw that the defensive line of the City of Dawn was constantly breaching, their expressions changed from gloomy to boundless joy. The large army of elves did not go to waste. The City of Dawn could not hold on any longer. They did not have any reinforcements. Or perhaps someone wanted to be the oriole behind the mantis stalking the cicada. But no matter what, it was almost certain that the elves were the victors of this war. Who would dare to come? They could not blame the elves for launching an all-out war. But suddenly, batches of dawn elves appeared on the battlefield. They walked out of the forbidden area of the Rainbow Lake. They were also at the master stage. They wore dark gold armor sets and held epic weapons. They flew to the city wall majestically and exploded with powerful magical combat power. For the first time, 3 million dawn elves appeared in front of the world. The moment they arrived on the battlefield, they had proven themselves. Even if they had never appeared, even if they had not experienced a war before. However, he possessed unbelievable battle experience and control. But this was not the most important thing. On the 4th day, on the 5th day, on the 6th day, another 5 million dawn elves appeared in the forbidden area of the Rainbow Lake. It was simple. As long as someone from the City of Dawn died, more dawn elves would appear in the forbidden area of the Rainbow Lake. It was a super bloody war that lasted for 6 days. Besides the World Tree Legion, the Mage Legion, and the Ranger Legion, the Legion of the City of Dawn had been completely destroyed. But what was the price? There were 30 million elves. The 3 elven kings were infuriated. They did not expect so many elves to be born in the World Tree. Kellandir waved his hand and activated the water mirror magic. He gritted his teeth and said, 30 million. We haven't even started the final battle, but 30 million of our people have died. Even if the City of Dawn lost 10 million warriors, it has an additional 8 million dawn elves. In addition to the slightly reduced number of players, the City of Dawn can still defend against our attack. More importantly, who knows how many dawn elves are in the World Tree? This doesn't make sense. The other 2 elven kings were silent. Could this be magic? Kellandir did not rush them. The current God's continent was very complicated. A holy war. It was best not to start a war between saints. Otherwise, in this battlefield where there were countless killings, a careless mistake could cause the meaning of the war to change. For example, both sides were fighting for the World Tree. But if the sages died in battle, the saints would not turn a blind eye. When the time came, they would not only fight for the World Tree, but also annihilate the enemies. 10 seconds. One of the elven kings said in a deep voice, 30 million. Enough have died. Let's start the holy war. Me too. Kellandir squinted his eyes. Holy war? Or a battle between saints? Are there any sages in the world who are a match for the Lord of the City of Dawn? Are we going to give him our lives? Then let's start a battle between saints. We'll help you hold Rogers back. Me too. Shall we kill them? Kellandir squinted his eyes. Kill them. Kill all the so-called dawn elves. As long as we have the World Tree, the elves will retreat into the small world. Rogers won't be able to break in. When he becomes a true god, why should we care about the others? Me too. Okay, Kellandir replied. His eyes glowed and locked onto William, who was sitting on the high tower. His Royal Highness narrowed his eyes and said loudly, Have you made up your mind? Defeat me and spare the City of Dawn. A figure suddenly flew up. His aura shocked many people. They lifted their heads and could not help but look at the high and mighty supreme sage. He was the true king, one of the 3 kings of the elves. He was going to attack. This was a battle of lives. It seemed like it was about to end. The legendary war had yet to start. The Sage War had yet to start. The Elven King could not bear it anymore. He could not stand by and watch so many of his people die. He had to settle everything personally. William took a deep breath and looked at the countless warriors and players who were looking at him. He walked forward step by step. He ascended to the sky step by step. His aura was increasing steadily. From the intermediate sage to the advanced sage, he used 30 steps. And from the advanced sage to the peak, he used 29 steps. In the next second, an indescribable aura descended from the sky and entered William's body. God's descent. The supreme sage aura suddenly rose. Spatial cracks appeared around his body. The expressions of the sages changed. Kellandir raised his eyebrows. Another step. A perfect elemental body. Intermediate sage. Many sages, main gods, and supreme sages were shocked. However, he still had one more step. Unparalleled. The peak of the intermediate sage. In the next second, he held a purplish-red thunderbolt in his hand. The aura of an advanced sage permeated the entire world. Thunder boomed in every inch of the sky. It was as though he had control over all the thunderbolts in the world. At this moment, many supreme sages were scared out of their wits. The main gods looked at him in bewilderment. Was the dual cultivation of the holy and divine so powerful? Are you King cheating? If not, damn it, why didn't you tell us that reincarnation and seclusion could be carried out at the same time? The light sovereign, the darkness sovereign, and the others all began to curse loudly. This young but indescribably handsome man had arrived in front of Kellandir. He leaned forward and asked, "Are you ready?" Gulp. A strange sound could be heard clearly on the vast battlefield. Sweat the size of beans dripped from the forehead of the Elven King. William smiled. He patted Kellandir's shoulder and said, "Who am I?" "Dawn Bang." William grabbed Kellandir's head, causing it to fall to the ground. The rumbling sound was deafening, and the entire southeast region felt a strong tremor. Tens of seconds passed. The smoke and dust dissipated. William stood alone in the deep pit. He stepped on the Elven King, who was locked by the thunderbolts. He asked the void again, "Who am I?" No one replied. No one dared to breathe. The entire world was silent. But just when William was getting a little impatient, two figures tore through the void and appeared. They were the other two Elven Kings. Both of them were at the beginner level of the Sage realm. They looked at each other, then at Kellandir, who was under their feet. Then they came to the front of William at the same time. In front of countless living beings, factions, and races, they lowered their heads and said respectfully, "Greetings, King." In the next second, the remaining tens of millions of elves turned their heads and knelt on one knee. They said in a deep voice, "Greetings, King. Greetings, King." The warriors of the city of Dawn knelt on one knee excitedly. "Greetings, King." Countless passionate players did the same. They were immersed in the scene. Many of the Chinese live broadcasters joined the crowd. William casually kicked Kellandir away. He flew up into the sky and surveyed the surroundings. He asked softly, "Does anyone disagree?" No one dared to speak. He smiled and said, "All right, from now on, I'm the only king of the elves. My request to the elves is simple. That is, those who submit to me will live. Those who oppose me will die." William glanced at Kellandir, who was sprawled on the ground and did not dare to breathe. Then he walked away. It was very difficult to advance to the supreme sage realm. Even if he reached the pinnacle of the sage realm and had the pinnacle god avatar, he could only reach the intermediate level of the supreme sage realm. However, the enhancement of the true god's thunder was unimaginable. Advanced level of the supreme sage realm? That was the realm of the fire god, the thunder god, and the storm god. Even if they were not as powerful as the Lord of Light, that was invincible. Chapter 691. When the three kings of the elves, the other super sages, main gods, and millions of creatures acknowledged William as the only king of the elves. Ding dong. Prompt. You have become the Elven King. You are the Lord of Dawn. You have more than 100 million professionals under you. You have completed your transcending sage occupation mission. That was right, since William had reached the peak of the sage level, which was the legendary level 359, There was no reason that he could not become a transcending sage. Unfortunately, it was also a very coincidental thing. His occupation mission was rather ridiculous. It was not a battle with a transcending sage for a few minutes, nor was it a killing of many sages. It was a Lord mission that could make players go crazy. It required him to have more than 100 million professionals under him. It had to be said, as the only sage player in his previous life, William was completely convinced by the mainframe's ridiculous mission. If he wanted to complete this mission, he could only become the Elven King. The City of Dawn had been developed to its limits. It had a population of 80 million and 30 to 50 million professionals. The regular army used to have more than 10 million, but now there were only a few million, according to normal development. Even if William shamelessly recruited people, he would need 7 to 8 years to complete this mission. And this was because he had the player mission system and the NPC panel. If it was a normal player, they would probably be stuck at a dead end. But it was a coincidence. The elves were attacking the City of Dawn. The elves were fighting for the Yggdrasil. The Elven King was willing to give up many things for the elves and the Yggdrasil. The three Elven Kings seemed to have become transcending sages. But if one looked at their hearts and how they wanted to kill William, they would understand something. After all, they were living for the elves. They did not want too many of their kind to die. These super sages were born in their own kind, and they had an inseparable connection with their own kind. When William attacked Kellandir with an unstoppable momentum, he did not kill him. The other two Elven Kings understood. The Lord of the City of Dawn wanted to become the true Elven King. Or rather, William had expressed this idea long ago. But at that time, Roger's Providence and the Dawn King had fallen out, so the Lord of the City of Dawn gave up on this idea. But after some serious consideration, they decided to make a decision. They discovered that William could have the combat power of a transcending sage at the peak of the sage realm. He had the support of the goddess of magic, the goddess of life, and Roger's Providence. They would probably become transcending sages in the future. Almost. When they saw that Kellandir had failed to block a single move, they felt a chill run down their spine. He immediately made up his mind. The elves could worship William as their king. As long as William could let the elves enjoy the benefits of the world tree, everything would be fine. In fact, there were many other key reasons. William had the blood of a half-elf. However, William's mother was the goddess of life, the former leader of the world tree and the elven lord. His father was Roger's godluck, who seemed to have the bloodline of a human. He was indeed the current god of fate. Most importantly, William was very handsome. He was very suitable for the elves. In the eyes of thousands of elven girls, the Lord of the City of Dawn was the embodiment of a perfect man. How could they bear to kill him? Anyway, a series of conditions, factors, identity, strength, and background. The three Elven Kings had no choice but to hand over the entire elven race to William and worship him as their king. Kellandir and the other two didn't have the confidence to step into the true god realm. In the chaotic Fourth Era, when many main gods and transcendent saints rose to power, why not trust the Lord of the City of Dawn, who had never stopped improving? It was true. They didn't care if William was the reincarnation of Odin. As long as he had the blood of the elves and was willing to treat the elves well, the three Elven Kings were willing to bet their entire race on this hope. That was, William had become a true god. The elves, who owned the world tree, had completely risen. At this moment, William had yet to dispel many of his skills. His real body had become a transcendent sage. In an instant, a purplish-red bolt of lightning pierced through the entire world at an extremely fast speed. It was not necessarily the bolt of lightning that was fast, but the bolt of lightning seemed to have countless clones appearing in every space at the same time. It was enough for countless living beings to sense the power of the laws of lightning. There was an explosion of thunder. The transcendent sage, the main gods, the sages, and thousands of powerful beings looked at William at the same time. They looked in disbelief at the man who kept creating miracles. Transcendent sage. He had really become a transcendent sage. In their eyes, it was more like after William became the Elven King, with the support of countless luck, he had become a transcendent sage. At this moment, the aura of God and sage intertwined. The energy of God and sage kept merging. The aura of a transcendent sage changed. Finally, the peak of a transcendent sage. All of a sudden, the entire heaven and earth were celebrating the new Lord of Thunder. Lightning flashed. There was a deafening roar. The rumbling of thunder spread across the two worlds. The Lord of Light, the God of Darkness, the Lord of Space, the Pope of Light, and the others widened their eyes and looked at William in disbelief. At this moment, there was only one word that kept repeating in their hearts. Gosh, the path of a new, true God. Countless people were certain at this moment. The holy and divine dual training was also a path to becoming a true God. From this moment onwards, there was another path to becoming a true God. There were 5 paths. Absorbing the origin of the world tree was one. Attaining the sage level for all types of laws was another. Obtaining the true God law was another. Transcending sage and the main gods was another. Holy and divine dual training was another. But the most heartbreaking thing was William's real body had become a transcendent sage. His Odin clone had also reached the peak of the god level. In that case, was there a possibility? When his Odin clone reached the level of a main god, the two of them would merge again and become a true god. But no matter what, according to William's current state, no one dared to touch the tiger's whiskers. Even if some main gods and transcendent sages wanted to attack Odin, they did not dare to do so. Furthermore, they also discover a problem. That was, William had mastered the true god Thunder origin. This item boosted his combat power greatly. The transcendent sages only knew that Odin had the power of thunder. They did not know that Odin had hidden the power of light. If William wanted to become a true god, he might even need to obtain the true god light origin. For a moment, the radiant master god's heart skipped a beat. This sly old fox immediately had an idea as he relayed this piece of news to the radiant Holy Father. The young and handsome Pope of Light's expression changed. He narrowed his eyes. No one knew what he was thinking. At the same time, William slowly deactivated the many boosts and kept the true god Thunder in his body. He smiled and glanced at the 3 elven kings. He said in a deep voice, "From today onwards, the elves will give up some territories and move into the world tree." The 3 elven kings looked at each other and bowed. "Yes, my king." Subsequently, William glanced at the attribute panel. TSK, TSK. Half of them were question marks, while the other half were garbled. What did this mean? The spokesperson of the mainframe was the true god. He was unable to create a transcendent attribute panel. He had a way to restrict the sages so that they could not easily become transcendent sages and lord gods. But he could not prevent transcendent sages and lord gods from becoming true gods. The current situation was very obvious. That existence, he was about to appear. As for the detailed geographical location, it should be at the place where the true God had perished. What I need to do now is to stabilize and wait for Odin to become Lord Gods. That way, I won't be considered weak, even though I'm at the peak of transcendent sages. William knew that even if Odin became Lord Gods, he would not be able to become a true god after the divine fusion. He had no choice. His body had an additional light attribute endowment. The true god light. Law would become a crucial factor for William to become a true god. But it was obvious. He wanted to fight for the true god light law. He would not only have to face the Lord of Light, but also the Pope of Light. Pope of Light. William raised his eyebrows. After he became a transcendent sage, he could clearly sense the Pope's aura. The peak of transcendent sage. It could even be said that half-step true god. This was the reincarnation of the 3 greatest sages of the humans, elves, and serpents. He was too powerful. Chapter 692. Why was the light attribute classified as a special attribute? It was obvious. There was no light. The creatures in the world were like blind people. They could not see anything. Thunder could emit light. Fire could emit light. Metal, wood, water, fire, earth, and time and space could emit light under extreme circumstances. Light was everywhere. There was no light. If there was not enough heat, life could not be born. It was because of the special attribute of light that the Lord of Light and the Lord of Darkness had the ability to look down on the Lord of Time and Space. And the most important point was, the appearance of light would bring hope to the creatures. Light was the symbol of all good things. Odin's clone had the endowment attributes of thunder and light. It meant that he had to compete with the Lord of Light and the Pope of Light. Fortunately, the core area of the true god's remains could not be entered, so William was not too worried. He arranged for the elves to enter the small world as soon as possible and integrate the other fragments of the small world into it. When William asked for the small world controlled by the elves, the three elven kings were initially reluctant. But when they were invited to the small world and saw that it was the size of the legendary continent, they immediately nodded and agreed. They put the remaining 18 small world fragments into the small world. How big are the small world fragments controlled by the elves? The largest one was the size of a human empire. There were tens of millions of people living in it, as well as various magical beasts and animals. The scenery was picturesque. It was like a real world. The smallest one was the size of a small human nation. There were only millions of elves living in it, but the rules were perfect. Why did William integrate the small world fragments into the small world? It was because the small world and the small world had the same origin. There was no need to consider the possible conflicts. This could further reduce the energy of the small world's expansion. 30 days after the war between the City of Dawn and the elves, the gods' continent once again fell into a state of silence. There were countless battles in the dark. The continuous spread of the belief in the gods and the establishment of the temples caused the sages of various camps to fight with the gods. Legendary professionals died frequently. Although the sages and gods had not caused any casualties, according to the speed of the spread of the gods, there would be casualties from both sides sooner or later. After the war with the elves, the City of Dawn fell into a state of extreme peace. The regular legions did not participate in any employment missions, and they did not expand their forces. They seemed to have decided to recuperate. All the outsourced employment missions were handed over to the players. This way, not only could the Dawn players earn enough EXP to catch up with their levels, but it could also compensate for their losses to a certain extent. This would allow them to participate in the storyline quests and not let them think too much about other things. At this moment, like a god of creation, William fused pieces of broken small worlds into the world tree's body. Many sages and supreme sages stood in the void. They could see huge islands and large continents around the land of Dawn. As time went by, when the 18 fragments of the small world had all fused into it, buzz, the entire small world began to tremble. William narrowed his eyes. With the support of the world tree, he stabilized the entire small world, allowing it to continuously move closer and strengthen itself. In the end, it turned from a huge continent with 18 islands into a huge continent. At this moment, the experts in the small worlds widened their eyes in disbelief. When the many small worlds were stacked together, they occupied half of the land area of the god's continent. The ocean area was also very large. This magnificent scene was even larger than the small world that the elves had once controlled. The rules were also more stable. It was like a new world. To put it bluntly, half of the land area of the god's continent was 10 times larger than Earth in the next second. Golden light descended from the sky and engulfed William. The invisible energy continued to fuse into his body. The data panel gradually lost its function. William also felt a change in his body. Or rather, he allowed the world tree to absorb the source of magic, allowing the small world in his body to expand. The world tree, which was now 60,000 meters tall, could give him more benefits. From now on, he would have an inseparable connection with the world tree. Even if he left the small world and went to the god's continent, the world tree would still provide him with a lot of support. Of course, the further away he was, the less support he would receive. But no matter what, if they fought beside the Yggdrasil, William would not be afraid of anyone. After a long time, William gradually came back to his senses. He asked, Have you calculated everything? Yes, I've been doing the calculations recently. Moses nodded and lamented. The density of mana in the small world is about 30 times that of the entire God's continent. The areas where the elves live can also receive the blessing of the world tree's halo, and the density of mana is 100 times that of the God's continent. There are so many mineral veins in this small world that we can't find all of them. The City of Dawn doesn't need to expand anymore. It's not a bad idea to leave everything to the Chosen Ones. We should keep a low profile as much as possible. Because of the accelerated time, many magical beasts, animals, and all kinds of rare creatures have been born on this continent. There are more than 30 billion of them. It has completely formed a perfect ecosystem. In the past month, a total of 490 million elves have moved into the small world. According to your plan, if the God's continent is destroyed, there's a high chance that we can bring the world tree and escape to the galaxy. We can take root on a planet and build a new world that belongs to us. As soon as Moses finished speaking, the former 3 elven kings, who were now the 3 little elven kings, were stunned. Burn Cinder, Diablo, Shein, and the other saints were also surprised. However, they nodded thoughtfully. The situation on the God's continent was too complicated. A battle between sages was enough to tear the continent apart. Supreme sages could easily destroy the world. Moreover, there might be a true God. The final outcome would be terrible. The gods and the dark world would be completely destroyed. William's current actions were also to avoid the problem of future worries. After all, the factions were very clear. The City of Dawn and the elves had become one faction. Now, there were 5 supreme sages: William, the 3 elven kings, and Rogers. The supreme pontiff of light seemed to be alone, but he was a supreme sage. When it came to the final battle, he would definitely join forces with the other supreme sages. The Seraphican had 5 supreme sages. The dwarfs did not have any supreme sages. The dragon race did not have any supreme sages. Perhaps the Dragon King's advancement to the true god level had exhausted the future of the race. But there might be new supreme sages in the future, and there might be other ways to become supreme sages. However, there were more main gods among the gods. There were a total of 23 gods. All of them were sages. Any supreme sage who dared to challenge the gods would be annihilated if they did not have a strong background. It was very difficult to kill a supreme sage. It was possible to defeat them. It was very difficult to kill them. Even if their bodies were completely destroyed, the supreme sages and gods could create new bodies and revive over a long period of time, as long as there was no so-called faith toxin. But unfortunately, there were 2 worlds. There were many supreme sages and gods. Only William had the ability to kill supreme sages. He was a true god's thunder. It was because of this super nuclear weapon that the 3 elven kings chose to submit to William. After all, they were all supreme sages. If it weren't for the fact that they couldn't sever the ties and emotions between their races, they would be able to live happily in the endless starry sky. These fellows really didn't want to die. At this very moment, Moses suddenly sighed. I suddenly realized a problem. What? If that true God could control the gods and supreme sages, it would not have been easy for us to become gods. So he thought of ways to make the gods reincarnate and become autistic. Faith is toxic, the others said at the same time. Yes, faith is toxic. Moses narrowed her eyes. She continued. The god of time only discovered that faith was toxic when he was about to become a god. It was like a starting point. The gods suddenly discovered that there was a problem with their faith. At that time, we did not have any doubts. We only thought that it was a negative effect when there was a sufficient number of them. But according to my current speculation, the true God had already appeared at that time. However, he wasn't that strong back then, and he couldn't stop us from becoming over-gods. He just used his own method to change the problem of faith, making it stop us from becoming stronger. He didn't have the courage to endure and become true gods. The others nodded in realization. William stroked his chin thoughtfully. He suddenly thought of something. That is, when programmers make some systems and software, they will install some backdoors inside. If gods was a game, The programmers had to install backdoors when they created the game so that they would have the identity of the GM. However, Gods was too big. If they wanted it to be an extremely realistic game, the GM could not change too many things. They had to let it develop naturally. It was obvious. The GM, true God, had achieved this. His methods were extremely cunning. He had forced the gods, which was constantly becoming stronger, to reincarnate and become autistic because of the problem of faith. Even in the mythological era, only the god of time had discovered his existence. He had dragged William over and changed some things slightly. But the GM had never expected that gods had developed too naturally. It had become a real and uncontrollable world. The NPCs had started to rebel. They had started a series of struggles and schemes. Now, the only thing I'm worried about is whether GM has feelings or not. William was deep in thought. He was not afraid that the GM was too strong. The only thing he was afraid of was that the GM had feelings. Because the GM who could predict the God of gods could not be a single person. It must be a mastermind or AI. But no one said that the mastermind and AI did not have feelings. There were two possibilities. The mastermind did not have feelings. Everything that happened in the future, no matter how the GM tried to restrict the growth of a supreme saint, he could not expose himself. He had to follow the rules. Kill. That did not exist. But if the mastermind had feelings, then any living being with feelings would feel afraid. And when he was afraid, everything would be hard to predict. But no matter what, now, William could only wait. Everything. It would be in the near future. The moment the relic of the true God's remains was reopened. Originally, it would take 100 years to reopen the relic. It was a pity. There were too many supreme saints and gods. They were madly weakening the energy of the relic. The reopening of the true God's remains would probably shorten rapidly. Chapter 693. They had to face the true God, who might be behind the scenes. No matter how wary the transcending saints and main gods were, they would not think of helping someone else and allowing an outsider to save them. Intelligent creatures were selfish. What they wanted was very simple. That was to let himself step into the true God realm and fight against him. Then, he would completely become the master of this world. Time passed very quickly. Soon, it was 5 years after version 5.0. At this moment, the entire God's continent was filled with the smell of gunpowder. The war between the gods and the sages. The war between the races. The war between the light and the darkness. All sorts of killings and chaos could be seen everywhere. This once very fertile land was now a scene of desolation as far as the eye could see. There were densely packed bones, corpses, graves, and mass graves. Plagues and ghouls were wreaking havoc. The players were numb as they completed their missions. The 7 continents, which were less than 300 nautical miles apart, were filled with the footprints of the players, as well as the fresh blood and bones under their feet. After the Lord of the City of Dawn became the Elven King and made all the elves into the Dawn Elves, he went into seclusion. But every time he appeared, he would cause a stir in the entire God's continent. At this moment, in the legendary continent, besides the City of Dawn, the other cities were managed by the players. As for the Dawn Undead Legion, there were more than 13 million players. Their name began to spread across the entire continent. Or rather, as more and more players attained the epic level and 90% of the players attained the Grandmaster level, the sages and gods started to pay attention to them. They started to use various methods to entice the players to become their subordinates. What was the use of 60 million beginner, intermediate, and advanced players? It was useless. The epic players did not even have to fight. They were vulnerable in front of the Grandmaster army. But all of them were Grandmaster undead, and they could attain the epic level. This made the major factions feel anxious. Hence, in the chaotic 4th era, stealing players and making them swear loyalty to themselves was also one of the reasons why the various powers were fighting each other. The human empires were no longer as peaceful and worry-free as before. The gods spread their beliefs in their territories, and the Lord of Darkness led his army to fight for land. When the human sages started to fight against the gods and the Dark Army, The Harpies took advantage of this opportunity to take over the lands of the Harpies and plunder resources. After Odom Heavyhammer stepped into the Saint Realm, he united all the dwarf kingdoms and formed a new lonely mountain dwarf empire. The many dragon kings of the Valley of Dragons still hadn't appeared, but the giant dragons that were originally on the continent had begun to devour all living beings during the chaos in order to strengthen themselves as much as possible. But in such a chaotic world, there was no one. Even though the City of Dawn was controlled by the players, there was no chaos or crime. The Dark Army turned a blind eye to the Land of Dawn and hurried away from hundreds of kilometers away. The Harpies would never take the initiative to occupy land that was close to the territory of the City of Dawn. The human empires in the legendary continent were still on good terms with the City of Dawn. They relied on the mercenary teams of the City of Dawn to resist all foreign enemies. In the current City of Dawn, in the current Fourth Era, it was the legendary paradise, a paradise that countless beings yearned for. Over here, there is no war. There is no hunger. There is no death. Here, there was only a carefree life, and there was no need to worry about any foreign enemies that might invade. If he performed well enough, he might even be able to live in the World Tree. And over there, this was the real immortal realm. Over there, this was the immortal realm that the King of Dawn lived in. Over there is Dawn. Dawn. City of Dawn, we've arrived. We've finally arrived at the City of Dawn. We're saved. Tens of thousands of people in ragged clothes shouted crazily. They were so excited that tears flowed down their cheeks. They had fled from a faraway place. They knew that the City of Dawn was here. It was the only safe place in the entire God's continent. Soon, the Dawn Sky Patrol seemed to have heard their cries. Otherwise, the Dawn Sky Patrol would have seen them. 100 Sky Knights, riding on griffins, descended from the sky. With smiles on their faces, they brought the frightened people into the City of Dawn. The City of Dawn would provide food, clothing, and housing for these refugees. Some of them would stay in the City of Dawn, while others would be assigned to other cities in the Land of Dawn. In short, in the face of this disaster, William had once said something. Any intelligent being that can come to the City of Dawn will receive the protection and care of the King of Dawn. To this, initially, some people objected. They felt that William did not need to do this. If he encountered good seedlings, he could keep them. There was no need to waste too much food and resources for them. But William felt that there was a saying that was very true. When one was poor, one should take care of oneself. When one was rich, one should help the world. When he was weak, he was willing to be shameless and disregarded his dignity for the sake of the City of Dawn's development. He only wanted NPCs with advanced bloodlines and above. He would rob, steal, kidnap, and use all sorts of methods to make the City of Dawn stronger. Now, the City of Dawn had become powerful. He was also in existence so powerful that he could stand shoulder to shoulder with the gods and saints. It controlled half of the small world in the God's continent, and the small world was still expanding as if it would never end. The resources inside were not endless, but it was really easy for it to take care of these suffering, intelligent beings. He knew, even if he did not save any living beings, no one would say anything. No one dared to say anything, because of his current status, power, and identity. His words were the law, the rules, and the king's way. He did not need to act according to other people's wishes. He didn't need to apologize to others in a humble manner. He was high and mighty. His words were the law. He was the king. But William understood that a small act of kindness from him could save a lot of people, the humans, winged people, Tauren people, and even small mermen who had encountered wars, killings, and robberies were a group of unlucky people. But they had thoughts and understood pain, anger, sorrow, and joy. They were all living, intelligent beings. There were no immortals or Buddhas in this world. But William only wanted to do his part. Or rather, William Dawn was a part of the God's continent. He wanted to do his part for this world. He had parents, brothers, friends, tens of millions of brothers who depended on him, and hundreds of millions of people and commoners who looked up to him. Of course, he had 2 girlfriends who would not quarrel unless they met. He was a part of this world. He did not want to make this world worse. He wanted to make this world better. He was the king of dawn. There were many things he could do, but he was unable to stop the war started by many supreme sages and gods. But he could maintain a neutral position, so no one could attack the city of dawn. No matter who you were, no one could. Otherwise, the enemies, they would taste the wrath of the king of dawn. The wrath of the king. It could only be extinguished by fresh blood. Ever since William became a supreme sage, he had been living in the world tree. Except when Odin became a god, William had to protect him. He did not appear again, but his guess was right. After Odin became a god, he cannot become a true god. It was just that his strength was truly formidable. How powerful was he? No one could defeat him. No one dared to try. William was not interested in finding someone else to help him. In the City of Dawn, a group of epic players were looking at various types of quests on the notice board. Many Grandmaster players around them were shouting, "Big bosses, please carry me. Help me with the class advancement quest. Can you lend me a set of equipment if you don't help?" D***MN. Isn't that Chu Yoshio, the quadruple crown king? D***MN. The players exclaimed. Chu Yoshio chose a punitive S-level mission and hurriedly led his team to escape. Lend equipment for the profession change mission? That was a huge loss. Soon, in a remote tavern in the old district of the City of Dawn, Chu Yoshio and his team entered. Once they entered, a commotion ensued. There were many players mingling with the NPCs. There were some Grandmaster players and 2 or 3 epic players. The people present were all old acquaintances. Chu Yoshio patted the bartender's shoulder. "Same old, OJBK." The NPC bartender spoke in the Chosen One's dialect. "Chu Yoshio, forever alone, you guys have reached the epic stage," said a player who was also at the epic stage. "That's easy. We're retired professional players. We can't be worse than you." Haha, that's not necessarily true. 2 days ago, a new player from the Glory Club was beaten up by a friend of mine. Chu Yoshio waved his hand. "Don't talk to me about this. I've already retired. I'm no longer a member of the Glory Club. If your friend is powerful, he can challenge me. If he loses, he will delete his account." The epic expert's mouth twitched. He gulped down the alcohol in his cup and gave Chu Yoshio a thumbs up. Then he turned and left. Chu Yoshio was a quadruple champion. Even after his retirement, Chu Yoshio was still a famous super expert in the Huaxiao region. In every large-scale war between nations, Chu Yoshio would be the commander. After so many years of war, he had one more than he lost. Who dared to defy this veteran professional player who had great control and a good grasp of the overall situation? After they entered the tavern, besides drinking and chatting, they stared at the entrance. They seemed to be waiting for something. 2 hours later, Chu Yoshio was disappointed and was about to leave. Creak! There was a knock on the door. A handsome man appeared. He glanced at the players who were waiting for him and smiled. "You know that I like to come to this tavern, so you're here to wait for me?" Some players scratched their heads and laughed. Someone even shouted, "City Lord, we didn't tell anyone. We just wanted to see you. You've been missing all day. We miss you." "I'm done. I'm leaving." A male player rubbed his crotch and was about to leave. Bang! A figure broke through the wall. That player did not care. He climbed up and quickly ran away. Before anyone could look over, an earth enchanter instantly created a wall. William glanced at this group of people and helplessly gave them some missions. It was obvious. Ever since some people discovered that he frequented this place, he treated this place as a place for strange encounters and hidden missions. He was very generous. Missions? He had plenty of them. Not to mention one, he had 10,000 or even 10 million missions. This was William's life for the past 2 years. He was relaxed and carefree. He was waiting for the land where the true gods perished to open. Chapter 694. Another 4 years passed. It was the 9th year of version 5.0. Until today, the Lord God had descended for 6 years. Under the guidance of the Lord God and the super saints, all the forces in the God's continent were at war. The 7 continents had yet to merge together. These 7 huge continents were about to be smashed into pieces. But the appearance of war meant that the speed of rebirth could not keep up with the speed of death. Other than that, one by one, The reincarnated gods entered the super saint realm and gradually closed the gap between the Lord God and the super saints. Of course, some of the reincarnated gods were traitors and did not care about their identity in this life. The Lord God of Darkness was still the master of the dark world, but he did not have much of an advantage in the gods' continent. The gods and saints were at war, but the gods' continent was the world they liked to live in, and they did not want the dark creatures to occupy it. This also made it difficult for the Master God of Darkness to take advantage of the situation and gain more benefits. The fight for faith was not limited to the war between the gods and saints. As the number of living creatures had been too high, the faith had decreased. This even caused some gods to fight amongst themselves. For years, 29 gods from the autistic faction and 13 from the reincarnated faction died. The saints had the most deaths, a total of 68. This included the Holy War, the Race War, the Faction War. In this era, even if there was a super saint, there was a high chance that they would be suppressed. If they did not resist, they would be slowly devoured. As for the forces that did not even have super saint, they're going to be treated as slaves, or else they would be divided into subsidiary forces. The dwarfs did not even have a super saint. They were already facing such a fate. They would be divided by many forces. If not for William, who made them give up their territory and move to the small world, they would be finished. The fourth era. This was the most chaotic, darkest, and most terrifying era. In this era, there was no more order and peace. War, enslavement, killing, and robbery could be seen everywhere. The players were very uncomfortable with this overly realistic plot background, which even caused some girls and male players to quit the game. There was no choice. It was too depressing. The plot missions in the later stages of version 5.0 were getting more and more perverted. This had exceeded the imagination and bottom line of some players. But since they pursued reality, then he had to see it through to the end. No matter how the players cursed on the official forums, the plot did not change, and the officials did not give any explanation or response. In fact, the players could not be blamed for this. The players were playing a game, and under normal circumstances, the mastermind would never consider the plot to be so dark and perverted. However, the main quest and the background plot had long since deviated from the main quest. The mainframe representative could no longer control the current situation. Even if he wanted to make some changes, as long as he did not personally take action, he would not be able to change the minds of those transcending saints and overgods. At the beginning of this great era, the signs of chaos were far more intense than the events of the previous 3 eras. Hence, some of the transcendent saints and main gods who felt uneasy also started working together. The Darkness Master God, Lucifer, and the other 6 existences formed the Darkness Alliance and led the Darkness Army to attack the gods' continents. The Radiant Master God had joined forces with the Fire God, the Son of the Sun God, the Tempest Master God, the Master of Magic, and the rest of the 7 Master Gods to create the Holy Light Alliance. While they were spreading their faith, they were also forming an army that was incomparably tyrannical. The Radiant Pope was not to be outdone. He worked together with the Rune Mages, Sunfall, Qualls, and the others to completely unify the human race and return to the early stage of the Third Era. The Seraphin had always controlled the Sky City and had never been divided. Naturally, they were still at the peak. Other than that, there are also some scattered top forces. But now, the Dawn Elves, Seraphin, Humans, Darkness Alliance, and Holy Light Alliance were the 5 most powerful forces. Similar to the mythological era, the era of a main god leading a few gods to form a faction had passed. The Thunder God and the Sword God were still walking the old path and could not compete with the other forces. In the 10th year of version 5.0, there was a loud rumble in the sky. Countless players and NPCs looked towards the southernmost part of the continent. They looked into the distance. They could not see anything, but there was a huge projection in the sky. It seemed to indicate that somewhere in the endless ocean, the sky had been torn apart. A huge hole like a black hole had appeared. It was as if endless chaotic energy was descending from the sky and surging into the ground, forming a huge black pillar of light. The indescribable and shocking projection could be seen by the creatures of the gods and darkness continents. One by one, the saints looked up in shock. Some super sages and main gods walked out and looked in the same direction expressionlessly. The city of dawn. Moses, who had become a super sage, quietly looked at the man beside him and said softly, "The dream continent and the hopeless continent have merged." Yes, with so many main gods and super sages, it's normal for them to merge 90 years in advance. William smiled as he looked in that direction. The three super sages behind him nodded in unison. Kellendier said, "My king, when are we going over? Now that the two continents have merged, the corpse of the Dragon King will be resurrected. The seal should have been removed. With the continuous influx of energy, if we don't stop it, we won't make it in time. We'll go now. But don't worry, they won't resurrect the Dragon King. His corpse has merged again. It's just a temporary respite. It'll make it easier for others to obtain the true God's origin." William narrowed his eyes and turned to hold Moses' small hand tightly. He said in a deep voice, "Stay in the city of dawn. If anything happens, bring the world tree and escape to the galaxy." Moses looked deeply at him and nodded. "Don't worry." Subsequently, William brought the three elven kings to the location of the true God's corpse. A rainbow light flashed. Black lines that tore through the sky appeared on the sea of clouds that was tens of thousands of meters high. In the next second, the four of them had arrived. At this moment, many people had arrived, as the dream continent and the hopeless continent had merged, coupled with the attraction of the true God's corpse. The middle of the continent had been torn apart, forming an extremely strong gravitational wave. Let's put it this way. After the body of the Dragon King was split into two, the two halves were sealed in the two continents. When the two halves came close to each other, the middle of the two continents collapsed. The gravitational wave produced by the corpses was enough to kill a sage instantly. But this wave also caused the seal to disappear. And those who dared to come here, they were all gods and transcending sages. There were only 40 of them, but they represented the 40 most powerful people in the world. As for the best of them, the Lord of Light, the Lord of Darkness, the Pope of Light, the Lord of Space, and so on. Why? Because they had reached the peak of the transcending sages. They only needed the true God's origin of the same element to become true gods. Other than that, the gods and sages were most afraid of the King of Dawn. This fellow, who was a god and a sage, was recognized as the strongest person below the true god level. William swept his gaze across the crowd. He did not care about them. He flew straight to the core region of the true god's corpse. He only had one goal. He wanted to take away the light element true god's origin. The three elven kings knew that even if they obtained the true god's origin, they would not be able to break through. So they protected him and acted as his bodyguards. The others did not stop him because they were not afraid that William would snatch their things. Or rather, many of the transcending saints and overgods present had appeared to protect the others. People who truly had the lucky chance to step into true God were just those few people. But even if the others did not make a move, the God of Light could not remain indifferent. He sneered and looked at the Supreme Pontiff of Light. "Hey, someone is snatching your true God's origin. Aren't you going to stop him?" The Supreme Pontiff of Light raised his eyebrows and smiled. "What's the hurry? Do you really think that there's no one else?" In the next moment, a beam of light shot out from the sky castle. Angel Michael descended from the sky. He was protected by 4 transcending sages. After a while, a total of 6 sage-level Dragon Kings appeared from the void. Dragon Valley? It was built by the Dragon King before his death. No one would notice a dragon's breakthrough inside. They surrounded a sage young Dragon King. It was William's dusk dragon, Blackie. But it was a pity. This group of fellows had used some kind of secret technique to remove the soul control. Little Black, who had already stepped into the saint's state, did not say a word after taking a deep look at William. Next, just when they thought that no one else would come, the god of the underworld arrived with the aura of the Styx. The god of death followed closely behind. They seemed to have fought before. Then, The goddess of luck and goddess of misfortune arrived hand in hand. Some people were dumbfounded. In the next second, the god of time arrived silently. His superior aura was not to be underestimated. Next, the suppressive aura of a transcending sage spread throughout the world. It was a pity. The corpses of the Dragon King were merging together. The transcending sage aura was quickly suppressed. But it did not matter. William and the others sensed that it was the god of devouring. Not long after, that sly old fox broke through the air and looked at them with a smile. Some people looked at him and realized that he did not have a human body. He had entered the transcending sage realm with the body of Yggdrasil. But his power seemed to be due to the body of Yggdrasil. Even though he had just entered the transcending sage realm, he had the combat power of a pinnacle sage. He was not weaker than the god of light and the others. At this moment, there were too many transcending sages and pinnacle gods. The oppressive aura made it hard for people to breathe. The god of darkness raised his eyebrows and smiled. "Who's not here yet?" Roger's Providence, the god of time, said softly. "Oh, he should be busy repairing his shattered destiny." The god of light sneered. William stopped in his tracks and turned to glance at him. He said in a deep voice, "If you speak without evidence, you will die. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Your father is the true God who controls us. Do you dare to deny it?" William was silent. He turned to look at the void. In the next moment, Roger's Providence appeared among the sages. He said expressionlessly, "Congratulations, you've guessed correctly. The true God's aura." It dispersed in an instant. Everyone's expression changed drastically. William's mouth twitched. He did not expect the plot to be so melodramatic. Another true God's aura suddenly appeared and fought against it. That was the Real Roger's Providence. He stopped the fake who was about to attack. He said with a grim expression, "That's my twin body, the representative of heaven, the mastermind who controls everything, the true God who intends to correct history." Chapter 695. All deities had twin bodies. One was a natural god, while the other was a natural ferocious spirit. Most gods would not attack this twin brother because they had no intelligence, and the ability to think. But most of them would let them go because of the slight connection and let them fend for themselves. But some natural ferocious spirits would also have problems. For example, the brother of the Lord of Darkness. He was once a natural ferocious spirit with intelligence. But what was beyond everyone's expectation was his father. Roger's Providence actually had such a powerful brother. Or rather, when a mainframe had created the Lord of the God's world, it had done so intentionally. It had not directly created a true God. Instead, it had integrated the true God, just like how William had reincarnated. It had made the true God a ferocious spirit. A natural ferocious spirit with intelligence, and intelligence was not restricted by any training. William glanced at his father in front of him, plus uncles and uncles. Ahem. In short, he felt a headache coming on. But now, he called this brother the mainframe spokesperson. William carefully thought about what Moses had said not long ago. The poisonous faith did not happen in the early stages. It only happened when someone was about to step into the realm of the Lord of Gods. From this point alone, one problem could be proven. Mainframe spokesperson also needed to be trained, and he wasn't strong enough back then. In addition, the mainframe could create this world, but it could not create a true God out of thin air. Could this also prove that the mainframe's control over this world was not as strong as they had imagined? After the mainframe created the complete rules of the God's world, the rules of this world were too complete, so it broke away from the mainframe's control. Therefore, the mainframe had no choice but to use the spokesperson method to let it return to its control. In the end, because of the problem of faith, the gods closed themselves off and reincarnated. This allowed the natural ferocious spirit to take the opportunity to step into the realm of the true God. And from then on, the first era, the second era, and the third era were all under the control of the mainframe spokesperson and continued to develop according to the plan. No matter how the god of devouring changed, he was just a pawn of fate. Everything was going according to the plan of the mainframe spokesperson. Yes, the King of Dragons stepped into the realm of the true god. It was part of the plot background created by the mainframe spokesperson. However, the world of gods had long since become a real world. Perhaps it was on the other side of the universe, or perhaps it was in another parallel universe. Anyway, William had transmigrated. I can't find a reason for this. Yes, so many people transmigrated for no reason. There was no reason for William's transmigration. Perhaps he was the savior of the other world? Anyway, from then on, someone like him, who was similar to the mastermind spokesperson, became the key to breaking the deadlock. Why did he say that William was similar to the spokesperson of the mainframe? That was because they both had the body of this world, but their souls did not. Perhaps they even had the same attribute panel. However, the soul and the body of the mainframe spokesperson might just be a high-level AI program and not a real soul. This was especially true for the god of time, who had long since become a being that wandered the river of time during the age of mythology. He was also the first to notice the existence of the mainframe spokesperson. Or rather, he felt that the future of the world of gods was too strange. This was too illogical. It was too coincidental. What were those chosen ones? Holy sh*t, it was like the existence of another world. Everything seemed to be arranged by someone. However, he didn't dare to say, because he didn't know if there was a mastermind in the world, and he didn't know who the mainframe spokesperson was. He didn't know how powerful the mainframe spokesperson was, so he could only use some tricks in secret. Therefore, he used his divine power to look at the countless years before and after the age of mythology. He even saw William, who was supposed to die. Of course, the main target of the god of time was definitely not William. It was because of the combination of the goddess of life and Roger's luck that the god of time took a second look at William. That scumbag William died, and his corpse was hung under the waterfall of the border town to cool off. But it was really the fourth era. The god of time, who was also the reincarnation of the god of time, the time grand enchanter of the Frost Empire, Kieran, suddenly discovered a problem. William's originally dead fate suddenly changed. Not only did he not die, he was still alive and well. He continued to use his own abilities to change the predestined situation. Many things that were originally destined were changed by him. Many things that were not supposed to happen happened one after another. He had even gotten together with Moses. Therefore, Kieran, who had long become a time sage, chose to enter the river of time to discuss with the god of time from the past. He decided to use a method that defied the natural order. That was to let William return to the past. He didn't expect him to completely change the river of time. He only hoped that he, the little butterfly, could spread its wings in the age of mythology and bring about unimaginable changes in the fourth era. What was the biggest change for him? He solved the problem of the poison of faith in advance, and allowed the gods to recover much of their strength in the divine realm. He allowed the gods to descend in advance, causing great changes in the fourth era. He allowed the Pope of Light to become a transcendent sage in advance. He had changed too much, and he himself was unstoppable. He cultivated both sage and god, and now he had entered a realm that people could only look up to. However, no matter how many methods the gods and sages used, no matter how much they achieved, when the true God arrived with great power, all the conspiracies and tricks would be completely destroyed. In the eyes of the true God, the nearly 50 transcending sages and gods were not even comparable to ants. The spokesperson of the mainframe, who looked like Rogers, looked at them expressionlessly. Enough. I didn't expect so many changes to happen in the fourth era. But if you want to become a true god and escape from my control, that's impossible. Actually, I don't want to kill you. You are a group of living creatures. You have your own thoughts, your own considerations, your own wishes, your own lives. You are supposed to be nutrients for me to step from superintelligence to a higher level. That's why I tolerated you to a large extent, allowing you to change the established history. But now, I can only erase your souls. I'll turn you into puppets, into established history again. The mastermind's voice was very cold. It was not the coldness of resentment, but the coldness of emotionlessness. But William could hear a sense of longing in his voice, a desire to sublimate. In an instant, the mastermind spokesperson suddenly attacked. Thousands of laws roared at the same time. In an instant, they engulfed the entire heaven and earth, enveloping the two continents. This method could not be compared to the Lord God's forbidden skills. When he attacked, it was like the suppression of the heaven and earth. It was as if the pressure of the entire heaven and earth had appeared on their shoulders, making them unable to move. At this moment, the gods' continents trembled slightly. Countless living creatures looked at the distant heaven and earth. They did not know what was happening in the distant endless ocean. At this moment, the transcending sages and gods unleashed their full strength. They wanted to survive under the destructive pressure, but the true God was too powerful. He was so powerful that they could not resist. He was so powerful that the true God's origin was nearby, but they could not retrieve it. But under this destructive pressure, Rogers stood up. Rogers Godluck stood up. He burned his life force and burst forth with the battle prowess of a true God, standing at the forefront. He shouldered unimaginable pressure and gave everyone a chance to survive. He tore a space crack with great difficulty. He turned his head and said in a deep voice, "I can't hold on for long. I can only unleash the combat power of a true God for a short period of time, because we share the same origin. Leave the main God's continent. Never come back." However, just as a transcending sage was about to escape, the space crack was torn apart by chaos. The transcending sage was instantly annihilated. In the end, there was a crisp sound. The eternal soul seed was extinguished. In 1 second, a transcending sage had died so easily. The other gods and transcending sages looked at each other. The true God's origin of the true God's corpse was a bait that could never be obtained. Under the current circumstances, they had no chance. In that case, so what if they attacked a true God, who didn't advance from a transcending sage to a true God? The master god of darkness laughed out malevolently as his entire body shone with a black light, causing the entire world of darkness to tremble. An endless amount of source energy of darkness surged over from the void and gushed into his body, allowing him to enter the state of a half-step true god. With a single punch, he tore through the void and punched out at the head of the representative of the mainframe. The Space Master God took a deep breath. The spatial ripples of the dream and impassable continent were all sucked into his mouth. He also attacked the mainframe representative, the Light Master God, the Fire God, the Thunder God, the Sword God, the God of Angels. One by one, the invincible rulers attacked the true God who controlled their lives in the dark. The God of Devouring had long known that his life had been planned. He had long known that he was being used as a chess piece. As he swallowed the scattered energy with his mouth, he pushed himself to a higher level and attacked furiously. The Time Master God looked at the mainframe representative and sneered. He waved his hand. Hundreds of Time Masters appeared in the sky. They came from countless different timelines. Even a half-step true God would not be able to withstand this move. Ursulin narrowed his eyes, the Tai Chi symbol above his head. If he did not increase his realm, he would not be able to stop himself from advancing to the true God level. The Light Pope also stood up. He took a deep breath. Illusory shadows appeared behind him. Subsequently, life burned. The aura of a true God appeared. He turned into a ball of light that illuminated the entire sky. But even so, Roger's providence collapsed. He had already burned his life origin. If he continued uncontrollably, he would die. The chief god of light collapsed. He was just like a broken rag doll, and his snow-white chief god robes were riddled with holes. In less than 3 seconds, the true gods summoned by the Time Over God were destroyed by the mainframe's representative. One by one, the super sages collapsed. One by one, the god lords fell to the ground. They were powerlessly suppressed by the mainframe representative on the ground. They did not despair. They just felt a little sad. Because their lives had actually been calculated by someone else, they resisted. Then they were going to be turned into puppets. But the only one who had not attacked was William. something was not right. The goddess of misfortune and goddess of luck were still chatting with William. Wait a minute. They were fighting to the death. What were the three of them doing? F***CK. They were doing things. Could they have some self-respect? But then again, why was Moses not here? The mainframe representative looked at William in surprise. He was about to kill William. But William laughed and patted the two sisters away. They were panting and flushed. He said in a deep voice, "Brother, do you know who I am?" The mainframe representative raised his eyebrows. Did the goddess of luck and misfortune infuse the origin into William's body? But so what? Even if an unlucky person like you had heaven-defying luck, could it be that you could step into the true God realm in one step? Of course not. But William and the World Tree had the ability to transfer energy. The World Tree could increase his energy. There was no reason why he could not transfer the energy to the World Tree. In that case, what would happen to Moses, who had the origin of luck and misfortune? The next moment, in the far north, the aura of a true god exploded. At the same time, William shouted, "I'm the King God of Charm. I'm the God of Charm. I'll tell you today. Look, save the world. My wife, help me beat him up." William cursed. The goddesses of luck and misfortune were infatuated with him. The next moment, the true god Moses stood in front of him and resisted all the storms for him. When William was weak, Moses was like that. When the magic sanctuary attacked, William stood in front of her. But now it was a good cycle. The goddess of magic reappeared in the world with her invincible aura. What was a good endowment? The endowment to save the world. It was the best endowment. He's handsome, beautiful, invincible. Chapter 696. Moses had just become a true god, but she had the power that transcending sages and main gods could not achieve. She was not a match for the mastermind, but she could still restrain him. Next, William obtained the true god source, and many transcending sages and main gods joined forces. Everything was settled. The mastermind's representative was outnumbered. He had to face two true gods at the same time. Under the beating of William and Moses, he could only vanish into thin air and turn into ashes. Would a true god die? Of course they would. For example, the situation with the Dragon King was similar to death, right? At the same time, after William became a true god, he discovered a secret. Or rather, as his realm increased, he almost became a higher dimensional being. This was enough for him to discover the connection between the mastermind and the God's world. Or rather, that connection could be called dimensional reduction. Close it, or not. William turned to look at the north. His vision spanned 1,000 miles. He looked at the confused players, who were staring at each other in confusion. Forget it. When someone becomes a sage, I'll close the server. William pondered for a while and made a decision. The sage was a turning point. The combat power was too high. If the players were not careful, they would become the fourth calamity. To prevent such a situation from happening, William decided to close the server manually. The connection between the mastermind and the God's world was like a higher dimensional being creating a lower dimensional world. For example, he had created a game in the computer. As the game was running, some programs would have problems. The programmers called this a bug, but the programmers could solve this problem. However, some game bugs could not be solved. If they were solved, the data would be abnormal. Of course, this was not the main point, because the game created by the mastermind would definitely be different from a game with tens of gigabytes. The mastermind was not creating a game. It was using its higher dimensional abilities to create a three-dimensional world or universe. In the process of creation, the mastermind constantly perfected the rules of the God's world. It became more and more reasonable, and it even formed a true three-dimensional world. But the Cortex Prime could create worlds, but after it created the real world, it could not truly control it. The mainframe could only use the method of a spokesperson to make him the strongest person in this world, thus becoming the GM and managing everything in this world. This was the so-called backdoor. If everything went according to normal circumstances, William, who had been reborn, would not have appeared. The world of gods would never be able to escape the control of the mainframe. No one would be able to become a true god, and everything would be within the calculations of the mainframe. It was a pity William appeared in this world. It also gave him an innate talent called being handsome. From this moment onwards, the future had completely changed. Why didn't the mastermind's representative kill William? This was because the mainframe spokesperson had no emotions. He only knew how to calculate. This was because even an ordinary minigame would have program errors. For a game in the real world like this, the number of program errors would be even greater, and the amount of calculations required would be even greater. The mastermind spokesperson knew that as time passed, many things would slowly slip out of his control, but he only needed to go with the flow and turn it into a storyline. He just needed to control the finish line. As for true gods, it was the finish line that no one could step into. As long as no one stepped into the finish line, no one would be able to escape from his control. Everything that happened was just a plot. However, no matter how powerful the schemes were, they could not win against one's looks. It was no longer a joke to say that one's looks could save the world. As for the creation of the world by the Cortex Prime, did the humans really develop such a powerful, super-intelligent brain? Or was this part of the Cortex Prime scheme? Then no one knows about it. William raised his eyebrows. He glanced at the other main gods and supreme sages and realized that they were very uncomfortable. He smiled and said, "The corpse of the Dragon King is over there. There's so many true god origins. If you want to take them, just take them. Don't worry about me." Really, the darkness main god gulped. No one would snatch the true god's darkness origin from him. He would definitely become a true god. Of course. Why would I lie to you? Generous, generous. The Time main god gave a thumbs up. The Dawn King is awesome. The underworld god expressed his admiration from the bottom of his heart. But what about me? The thunder god's mouth twitched as he muttered softly. The supreme pontiff of light and the lord of light were expressionless. Everyone else could become a true god in a single step. Only they had to train slowly and become a true god. But then again, without the Cortex Prime's representative above their heads, the other true gods did not suppress them. The other main gods and supreme sages could also become true gods in a short period of time. William ignored them. He healed Roger's Providence's injuries and asked softly, "Where's my mother?" Before he could reply, "Oh, you've already sent her to the City of Dawn." Yes. Roger's Providence looked at his old son with a complicated expression. Things had come to this. Everyone noticed William's abnormality. He seemed to be a chosen one, but he was different from the others. No matter what, William, the traitor, was on their side. Roger's Providence didn't have too many grudges in his heart. Subsequently, Moses raised her head and looked at the starry sky. She suddenly asked, "When I was a main god, I had the intention to explore the starry sky. At that time, I'd already flown for many years to a faraway place. But the true God planted a seed in my mind and made me fly back." "Why? You want to go to the starry sky?" "Yes." Moses nodded. William raised his head and smiled. "Good. When the chosen ones defeat the dark army and think that they have saved the world, I'll bring the world tree, the city of dawn, and all of you to the boundless sea of stars. I'd like to see, did the mainframe create a universe? Or did it only create a world within a three-dimensional universe?" "Really?" Moses blinked his eyes. "Of course. Do you want the gods' continent?" No, it's almost destroyed. After the chosen ones leave, I'll let the world tree absorb the entire world. Then, we'll head to the starry sky and capture a planet. I'll dominate the galaxy and create a universe. Hubby, you're awesome. It's just SOSO. Moses' expression suddenly darkened. She said in a deep voice, "Speaking of which, when did you hook up with the goddess of luck and goddess of misfortune?" William raised his eyebrows and coughed. You might not believe it, but from the day I smashed their statues, they fell in love with me." "Ah, you're asking for a beating. Shameless. Sisters, beat him up." When the three goddesses joined forces, they were invincible. Moses' expression changed slightly, and he shouted, "How dare you?" Subsequently, he escaped without a trace. He took a step forward and disappeared. William returned to the City of Dawn. He glanced at the high-dimensional tunnel that was connected to the players. He could not help but mutter to himself, "Do you think I should go and take a look? Forget it. However, I can plant a seed for one of the players." William narrowed his eyes. He was not in a hurry. He could still read the forum. Now he just had to wait for Pugilistic World to appear. He wanted to take a look. The Cortex Prime. What was that?